Oxford University's World Leaders Circle. How do you think you can affect change when you're not in power?
One of the things I often say is that, particularly when you look at a really critical long-term issue like, say, climate change, where, if you're an activist in that space, it's very easy to become disheartened if you feel that politicians aren't moving at the rate that's required. And my argument there is, of course, for an issue like that, politicians set the rules of the game. They're the ones that are speeding the game up or they're slowing it down, but they are not the only players on the field. And the same holds for a number of issues. And so my point there being, to anyone who's in civil society or the private sector, everyone has a role to play for some of those really significant, difficult issues that we need to address. When it comes to, though, how do you generally affect change when your area of concern might be political leadership in itself? I have a fellowship now where I work with people who are in politics, and my goal there is not only to support them in their roles, but to reinforce that those values that got them into politics are values worth holding on to. Because actually, there's not a lot of headlines over this, but I do believe that voters are looking for more compassionate leadership.
Thank you for listening to the interview from the BBC World Service. You'll find more in-depth conversations on the interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts, including episodes with global leaders like President Donald Trump, President Lula da Silva and President Duma Boko. Until next time, bye for now.
From the BBC, that was the interview. I'm Saroja Quay.
Good morning, Manitoba. It is Tuesday, December 16th. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in for Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us this morning. Let's say hello to our team. Abby Adiemi is our technical producer. Darren Morash is our YouTube live stream producer. And Corey Funk is our show director. And Heather Wells is here with news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a fire at Portage and Ruby this morning has closed a couple of lanes on westbound Portage. Police say the fire started at 5:27 this morning in what they say appear to be a couple of vacant buildings. Police say it looks like, for now, westbound Portage is closed between Burnell and Lipton. So keep that in mind as you get going in Winnipeg this morning. The second night of Hanukkah was marked at Winnipeg City Hall last night. Mayor Scott Gillingham lighting a candle on the menorah in front of about 40 people. He says the city stands with the Jewish community. This, of course, connected to the attack on Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia on the weekend, where 15 people at a Hanukkah celebration were killed. We'll hear the latest on the investigation in that story coming up on World Report, and more Manitoba news coming up at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Coming up on Information Radio, anti-Semitism in Canada has risen sharply in recent years, according to recent statistics. We'll talk to a law professor about how the mass shooting in Australia has spread fear throughout the Jewish community here. And odds are you've seen a nativity scene depicted on someone's front lawn, in front of a church, or even on your own mantle. But how do the events in that scene, stars, wise men, and stables, match up with what the Bible says about the birth of Jesus? That story is also still to come. As well, multiple outreach groups have been calling on the city to rethink how they enforce the new encampment rules, saying there's not enough temporary housing to go around. Coming up in our 7 o'clock hour, we will hear from the city officials about how that plan is working. For those stories, weather updates, music, and more, you can stay with us here on Information Radio. And speaking of weather updates, it's a bit of a out of the ordinary kind of day out there. -4 right now, but temperatures are set to rise. Mainly sunny today, 60% chance of rain showers early this afternoon, a high of +3.
On cue.
Merry Christmas, Bikini Bottom!
Tom Kenny has been the voice behind the iconic cartoon character SpongeBob SquarePants for more than 25 years. He says it's still the best job in the world. He'll tell you how he knew it had taken off when he started seeing SpongeBob t-shirts and why he thinks this character is still so beloved after all these years.
Q with Tom Power this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Hundreds of mourners are showing up at Bondi Beach. They are bringing flowers, messages of love, and rejecting the anti-Semitic attack that happened there on Sunday. There are calls for justice for the 15 people who were killed on the beach, and also calls for stronger gun laws. The CBC's Georgie Smythe is in Sydney with the latest.
People stand dazed, staring at a swelling memorial for the lives lost in Bondi. Australian Jews who were hunted at the country's most iconic beach, says Australian Federal Police Commissioner Chrissy Barrett.
It appears the alleged killers were interested only in a quest for a death tally.
Slowly, the public is learning more about the victims gunned down at the Hanukkah event at the weekend, and more about the alleged gunmen, a father and son, who had 2 homemade ISIS flags. Australia's public broadcaster reports both men travelled to the Philippines last month for military-style training. The son who survived the attack is still in hospital, awaiting significant charges. New gun laws are on the way, says Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
Limiting the number of guns an individual can own, the type of guns that are legal, whether gun ownership should require Australian citizenship.
No matter how much darkness, one little light can shine up.
Rabbi Yaskov Barber lives and works in Bondi. He called on mourners to fight back against divisions.
If we let what happened on Sunday flourish, not just the Jews, it's the whole society will decay.
Police are expected to take down crime scene tape in the next day, returning this much-loved public space to Australians to heal. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Sydney.
A Canadian delegation, including 5 Liberal MPs, have just been denied entry to Israel. They were trying to enter the country by road, and they were planning to visit Jerusalem and then travel to the Israeli-occupied West Bank. NDP MP Jenny Kwan is also part of the delegation. She says they were planning to visit Palestinians who have been affected by settler violence and live in displacement camps.
The issue that we're pushing for is really grounded on human rights, basic human rights and humanitarian action. Having a chance to getting closer to the issue, talking to the people firsthand, I don't think that could be replaced.
The Canadian delegation also had plans to meet with the Palestinian Authority, which administers part of the occupied territory. The trip was sponsored by the Canadian Muslim Vote, a Muslim-registered nonprofit in Canada. The Israeli government declined to comment on the visit. The cleanup is starting in British Columbia's Fraser Valley. The region is getting more rain, but with less intensity. Rainfall warnings have been downgraded from orange to yellow, but as Aaron Collins explains, the situation is different south of the border.
We don't think it's going to get to where it's scary.
Turns out David McBride was right. Despite heavy rain, the Fraser Valley avoided the worst. McBride says flooding is always a risk here.
It could come up. It's living in the valley. It always could come up, right? Like that's part of living here.
Connie Chapman with BC Water Management confirms the risk of more flooding has passed for now.
The weather event that we had been watching has now since passed. Peak flows in streams are occurring and will continue to occur over the next couple hours before starting to recede.
Environment Canada had warned of more flooding for the area, but it didn't materialize. Across the border in Washington state, residents weren't as lucky. A breached levee leading to a flash flood warning and more evacuations. Brendan McCluskey is Director of Emergency Management in Washington's King County.
From this area, it was mostly industrial and commercial. I don't think there were any residential areas, but we've had evacuations in other places, and probably upwards of 500 have been evacuated.
Back in BC, most evacuees have been allowed to return home. Officials there say the worst of the rain has now passed. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Abbotsford, BC.
The most vulnerable people around the world are not getting the help they need. That is the warning today from a global humanitarian group. The International Rescue Committee is releasing its annual report. It looks into the 20 countries most at risk of a widening humanitarian crisis in 2026. Sudan is at the top of that list for the 3rd year in a row, followed by the occupied Palestinian territories and South Sudan. Kieran Donnelly is the vice president at the IRC. He says humanitarian funding globally is half of what it was last year.
What our clients and teams around the world are living on a daily basis is a world shaped by power politics, geopolitical rivalry, and transactional deal-making. And that shift is driving both sides of the humanitarian emergency that we're witnessing today, a surge in crisis and need and a collapse in global support.
Donnelly says more than ever, war is being turned into a profitable enterprise. He says 98 countries are involved in wars beyond their borders, and there are more active wars now than at any time since the Second World War. The Los Angeles District Attorney is expected to get the case today, looking into the deaths of Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle. Their son, Nick, was arrested late Sunday in connection with the incident. Steve Futterman has more on what's coming next.
By the end of the day, it's possible Rob Reiner's 32-year-old son, Nick, may be formally charged with murder. Yesterday, Police Chief Jim McDonnell announced the arrest.
We have our Robbery Homicide Division handling the investigation. They worked on this case and were able to take into custody Nick Reiner. He was subsequently booked for murder.
Right now, he is being held without bail. Nick Reiner had battled numerous mental health challenges over the years, including substance abuse. In 2015, he and his father co-wrote the film Being Charlie, which was based on Nick Reiner's struggles. At that time, Rob Reiner talked about hope.
Well, he's been good now for 3 years. I mean, he's doing great, and he's writing another thing, and yeah.
Numerous tributes continue to be paid to Rob Reiner. Those have been somewhat overshadowed, though, by remarks from Donald Trump. Reiner had been very critical of Trump over the years, but few expected this after the violent killings.
He became like a deranged person, Trump derangement syndrome. So I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all.
As the investigation goes on, there are reports that Nick Reiner's parents had become concerned about his behavior in recent weeks. And there are other reports that just hours before the killings, Nick Reiner and his father had a very loud argument during a Christmas party. Steve Futterman, CBC News, Los Angeles.
The Trump administration says construction of a new White House ballroom must proceed. Officials say it's a matter of national security. U.S. President Donald Trump has championed the project to replace the White House's East Wing. The price tag is reportedly in the hundreds of millions of dollars. The CBC's Willie Lowry has more from Washington. And Willie, how did this argument come about?
It's part of a lawsuit filed by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, asking a federal judge to stop the Trump administration's construction of that White House ballroom. The administration filing papers yesterday saying construction can't stop because it would pose an unspecified national security concern. In the 36-page filing, the deputy director of the U.S. Secret Service said even a temporary halt on the current site demolition would, quote, consequently hamper the agency's ability to carry out its mandate. Of course, demolition started in October. The trust is arguing that the administration fast-tracked the process and didn't go through a proper review process. In its lawsuit, the trust said, quote, no president is legally allowed to tear down portions of the White House without any review whatsoever. Not President Trump, not President Biden, and not anyone else. And no president is legally allowed to construct a ballroom on public property without giving the public the opportunity to weigh in.
The East Wing has already been demolished. So what can they do at this stage?
Well, something will have to replace what was the East Wing. President Trump has long argued that the White House was in desperate need of a space large enough to accommodate big groups of people. But the ballroom won't just be big. At 90,000 square feet, it will dwarf the White House. The National Trust for Historic Preservation, a nonprofit tasked by Congress to protect and preserve historic sites, said it would be open to working with the White House and other entities to ensure that the ballroom that emerges is more in line with the White House while still meeting the administration's needs. A hearing in the case is expected later today in Washington.
Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Willie Lowry in Washington. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in this morning for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on our YouTube live stream or anywhere on your CBC Listen app. Thanks for joining us this morning. Coming up on the show, a look back at the fall session on Parliament Hill. We'll talk to Ryan Tumulty, political reporter with the Toronto Star, about where we are as MPs return home for the holidays. Also, we'll talk to a Canadian law professor about how the mass shooting in Australia at a Hanukkah gathering has raised fear among Jewish communities around the world, including in Canada. But first, we'll take you to a special Hanukkah event hosted at Winnipeg City Hall last night. It's time for news headlines with CBC's Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, a heightened level of security is coming to Winnipeg City Hall. A new walk-through metal detection system is going to be installed at the entrance early next year. This, as a councillor hired 2 private guards last week for an event in her ward. Janice Lukes brought them in as a precaution after hearing about a possible protest over changes to Winnipeg Transit. Businesses had their say and a chance to ask questions about a proposed safe consumption site at 366 Henry last night. Raymond Wan at the Winnipeg Chinese Cultural and Community Centre doesn't think the site is a fit with long-term plans to revitalize the area. Wan wonders why the site can't be put next to a hospital where there is both care and access. And Beverly Burkhardt at the Winnipeg Inner City Missions, which caters to children in its community centre, says parents won't want to take their children to an area with increased risk. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Hello, and thank you to the team on the show this morning. Darren Morash is our YouTube live stream producer. Abby Adiemi is here as well as our studio technician and our weather guy.
Good morning, Chloe. We're looking at a mild start to the day as the province, we're bracing for this dramatic shift as a powerful cold front brings that messy mix of rain and, freezing rain all down to the south, while not still locked in that deep freeze situation we've been seeing for the past few days. Though the south is going to be seeing a brief warm-up before those gusty cold fronts moves in, and we will be seeing more like chilly conditions up north. Winnipeg right now, we're looking at -4 at the Fox. It's clear. Temperatures hovering near that freezing mark this morning before we see our high of about 3 degrees with a mix of sun and clouds. Then that's just going to be brief before we get that good chance of rain showers and flurries that's going to be moving in the afternoon as the gust of wind shifts to the northwest. Temperatures later then drops to about -13 overnight.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, our show director. How is the run-in today?
Yeah, it's starting to get a little bit mushy, a little bit sloppy underfoot. I'm just ready for those puddles to form for the way home. But then also they're going to freeze, right, in the next couple of days.
Ooh, and then your next run is going to be slick.
Yes, and that's probably going to be the case for the roads in the next few days. But for now, it's sloppy. It's kind of slushy out there. I do want to let folks know about something that the police told us about. So there's a fire at Portage and Ruby that's closed a couple of lanes on westbound Portage. That started about 5:27 this morning, the police say. It looks like westbound Portage is closed, actually, between Burnell and Lipton. So that's going to throw off your commute this morning. That's westbound Portage between Burnell and Lipton closed this morning because of that fire. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. And if you have any updates for me, if you're out there on the roads, if you're walking, you're biking, you're driving, give me a call. Let me know throughout the morning what you're seeing there, especially around that area of Portage and Ruby. You can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Around 40 people gathered at Winnipeg City Hall last night to light the second candle of the menorah. Mayor Scott Gillingham hosted the Hanukkah event in the wake of the deadly shooting in Sydney, Australia on Sunday. 2 gunmen opened fire in the city's Bondi Beach as hundreds gathered for Hanukkah. The event took place outside the mayor's office, where at least 4 police officers were stationed throughout the ceremony. CBC's Santiago Arias Orozco was there and he spoke with some attendees.
Rob Waldman. I am associated with the Chesed Shel Emes, which is the Jewish Funeral Society in Winnipeg, and I'm also president of the board of my synagogue, the Chaver Mishnaya Synagogue.
When we see what happened over Sydney on Sunday, and last night that was the first night to lit up the menorah, how was the environment at your synagogue, at your congregation?
Well, we haven't met as a congregation since that. It happened after our services on Saturday. Personally, I think it had a cumulative effect following the last 2 years, which have been very emotionally difficult for, I think, Jews around the world, because we understand that as a people, this happened to us. We're far removed from Gaza, we're far removed from Australia, but as a people, we include ourselves in this community. They are certainly family, and we have to consider ourselves that this affects us directly. Not only that, but I think that anybody who believes that this couldn't happen here is naive. There are synagogues and institutions in larger centers, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, that have had violent assaults on their synagogues and institutions. And sadly, I hope it doesn't, but it could happen here. And to think otherwise, I think, is naive. Hanukkah, people may know and understand, is the Festival of Lights. Part of the tradition of that is that the lights that we light, the candles that we light, help to enlighten the world, help to push back the darkness. And I think that we live certainly in dark times. Normally for me, this is lighting the candles is something that you do at home with family, with friends, sometimes by myself. It's meaningful in that respect. But this year I felt it was very important for me to do it in public, with the community, as a show of solidarity for the world community of Jews, and especially for the Jews in Australia.
My name is Gustavo Zedner, Vice President of the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, CIJA. So we are very thankful by the display of support that we have just received from allies, from government, elected officials, from many communities, and of course the Jewish community. We had just finished a horrific experience in the horrific attack in Australia, just hours before we in Canada started celebrating Hanukkah, which symbolizes basically the light, the good spirits, the hope for a better future, and celebrating our resilience as a community, and more importantly, remembering all nations that the Jewish people have been around for thousands of years, and this is one more challenge for us to overcome. What's different this time is the outpour of support. Communities and allies taking a stand against hate in all of its forms, against anti-Semitism, and standing side by side with the Jewish community. Being at an event like today at City Hall means that we are being recognized as a community by elected officials, by partners. We're thankful for the support that the Winnipeg Police Service continues to provide to the community, but that's the most important point that we want to share with the rest of society. No community should be investing as much money and efforts in providing additional security for that community to celebrate any religious activity. And that's the main concern that we have today. No community should dedicate infrastructure dollars away from other social services. And certainly we look to the allyship that we have forged over the years in building this country for a safe Canada for all. Specifically, we look to the federal government of Canada, to all provinces and at the municipal level, to advance security and the protection of all communities, including the Jewish community. And we want to denounce that the times in which we live in currently are unacceptable. There should be no meandering of messaging and simply statements. These words have to be followed by impactful activities led by elected officials. Charging people when there is a hate crime or harassment, the detention, and look to law enforcement, not only to retain people, but also to prosecutors to charge and lay charges and follow the law.
That was Gustavo Zentner and Rob Waldman speaking with the CBC's Santiago Arias Orozco at a Hanukkah event at Winnipeg City Hall last night. The mass shooting at a Hanukkah event on Bondi Beach in Australia on Sunday has only increased fear among Jewish communities around the world. They've been warning of rising anti-Semitism and violence over the past couple of years. Canada is no different, where there have been numerous attacks against Jewish people, schools, synagogues, and community centres. Michael Geist is a law professor at the University of Ottawa and joins us this morning over Zoom. Good morning.
No, good morning.
We just heard from Jewish Winnipeggers, but how has the mass shooting in Australia, which happened on the first day of Hanukkah, been affecting the Canadian Jewish community overall?
Right. Well, I think it's affected communities across the country, unsurprisingly, frankly, Jewish communities around the world. And we've seen rising anti-Semitism, certainly in Canada, in some pretty horrific ways. And we've seen in other countries the escalation of violence that's associated with that. Murders in the United States, in Colorado, in Washington, murders as well in the UK, in Manchester, during Yom Kippur, the holiest day on the Jewish calendar earlier this year. And now, of course, this event. Just horrific event that took place in Australia. And I think many communities, wonder whether or not is this going to come here. We've seen violence, to be sure, not this level in Canada. But we certainly see some of the same kinds of things that feed into this taking place here. And so it creates a real sense of fear.
How has anti-Semitism increased in Canada over the past couple of years? What have we seen?
Right. Yeah. The data that we've got, it tells, I think, a pretty devastating story. So if we look at StatsCan data from Statistics Canada, they compile police-reported hate crime data. So this is not, judgment calls by different groups. This is the actual hate crimes that are reported to police that are then investigated. And while Jews make up only about 1% of the population in Canada, when police talk about hate crimes that are motivated by religion, Jews are the target 68% of the time. So 1% of the population, but 68% of the religious motivated hate crimes target the Jewish community.
What about violent incidents of anti-Semitism in Canada?
Yeah, we've seen it all over the place. And I know that even in Winnipeg, there's been anti-Semitic graffiti at a community center, I think just last year during Hanukkah. But in many other cities, we see stuff. In my own, in Ottawa, that we had a stabbing over the summer of an elderly Jewish lady at a grocery store known to be frequented by Jews, given the availability of kosher food. Saw the defacing of the National Holocaust Memorial. And in some of the larger centers like Toronto and Montreal, there have been shootings at schools and synagogues. Over the summer in Montreal, we had a Jewish man beaten on video in front of his children. And most recently in Toronto, we are seeing what are described as protests, but it seems to me they're really more about hate than they are protesting anything, going through Jewish neighborhoods. So not targeting a government, not targeting officials or offices, but literally just targeting Jews where they live.
Can you describe the larger effect beyond fear that this is having on Jewish communities across Canada?
Yeah, it has an enormous impact. To be Jewish today, to take your kids to a Jewish school or to go to a Jewish community center or to a synagogue now invariably means a police presence. It's really a requirement in a sense from a security perspective. And in fact, for many events, the location itself is not publicly disclosed until about 24 hours before the event out of security related concerns. Now that's at a community level, but I would say at an individual level, it becomes increasingly hard to be openly Jewish. And so that means not wearing the yarmulke, the head covering if you're a male, hiding a Star of David if you happen to have one, removing a mezuzah from your doorstop that identifies it as a Jewish home. And so that ability simply to express yourself, practice your religion in Canada becomes that much more difficult out of the kind of fear that you might make yourself a target in doing so.
Michael, what is the federal government doing to better protect Jewish communities?
Yeah, not enough. And they are doing some things. There is funding for some of the security that we just talked about. There is Bill C-9 right now that is designed to create bubble zone legislation, which would provide a bit of a protective cover to allow for protests, but protect the immediate space around vulnerable institutions like hospitals and schools and old age homes. But at the same time, we've gone more than a half a year without the government appointing a new anti-Semitism envoy. And it's too often mixed messages, whether from the federal government or frankly from leaders at other levels as well, where they're afraid to call, it would seem, anti-Semitism anti-Semitism out for what it is. And so they might describe an event without really referencing the fact that there's an anti-Semitic undertone or objective that is at play, or they might bring it together with, all hate matters, so to speak. And all hate does matter. But as we've been talking about, there is a very specific issue right now around anti-Semitism. And if we're not willing to even call it out, how are we going to effectively deal with it?
What would you like listeners to think about as we reflect on the long arc of anti-Semitism in Canada, especially during Hanukkah?
Yeah, well, I'm listening. You know what? That the long history tells us that what starts with Jewish communities doesn't end with Jewish communities. And when you're just 1% of the population, the ability to take this on your own isn't there. And so I think people need to reflect, frankly, on some of the kind of coverage and I think libels that we've seen take place that have, I think, made Jewish community an even bigger target over time, and recognize that some of the sorts of activities, even if undertaken with good intentions, are having this devastating effect on the Jewish community here at home, and we need to find a way to deal with that.
Really appreciate your time this morning, Michael. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Michael Geist is a law professor at the University of Ottawa.
CBC's New Year's Eve show is back, and we want to know, what are you doing on New Year's Eve? Last year, we reached 6.8 million Canadians as we counted down live in all 6 time zones. Now, we're looking to join celebrations across Canada. Are you getting married? Doing something special? Send an email to ask@cbc.ca, and we might send our cameras to your party. Get ready for the live Cross Canada Countdown.
You are listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen. And Daniel Lanois is an exceptional musician. As a record producer, he has worked with bands like U2 and artists like Bob Dylan and Emmylou Harris. Alongside multiple Grammys, he's also won 8 Juno Awards. Here's one of his tracks. This is Still Water.
Sad eyes, where you going with that confidence? Sad eyes, where you going with that confidence? I'm going to where the boats go by, Caledonia River flows so wide. I'm going to where the boats go by, Caledonia River flows so wide. Still water, laying over. Still water, laying over. Still water, laying over. Caledonia River, oh so wide. Wild eyes in the wilderness, where you're going with the devil in hand. Wild eyes in the wilderness, where you're going with the devil in hand. I'm going to build a bridges high for working money, for working money. I'm going to climb the bridges high, Caledonia, brother, far away. Still water, I'm laying over. Still water, lay my body down over. Still water, laying over. Caledonia River, far away.
That's Daniel Lanois with Still Water from his album Acadie. Well, still to come in this hour of Information Radio, we'll head to Ottawa and check in with Ryan Tumulty, political reporter with the Toronto Star, about what stands out for him as we prepare to say goodbye to 2025. And also, we'll hear why some Canadians doing their holiday baking shell out big for French butter. Those stories and more coming up after your CBC local news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. It's 6:30, a beautiful, mild morning. The temperature is going to fall. High of 3 today, but falling to -8 this afternoon, and a good chance of showers becoming flurries this afternoon. And then watch out tomorrow. Some snow is in our forecast. Well, when Winnipeg Transit overhauled its bus network this summer, the city promised faster and more reliable service. But new data shows more riders are being left behind as full buses pass them by. CBC's Cameron McLean reports.
A pass-up happens when a bus is too full to take on new passengers. Between September and November, Winnipeg Transit recorded nearly 7,000 pass-ups, about 1,200 more than during the same period last year. That's an increase of more than 20%. On a cold Winnipeg morning, commuters line up at stops, hoping the next bus has room. For rider Yuna Du, being passed up can throw off her entire trip home.
Feel depressed?
Another commuter, Darian Duclos, takes the bus downtown 5 days a week. He says pass-ups during the afternoon rush have become something he plans around.
I've kind of learned to expect it now.
The city says pass-ups typically rise every September as students return to school. Councillor Janice Luke says while frustrating, pass-ups are still lower than pre-COVID levels.
I think that's a positive thing.
Winnipeg Transit launched a new winter schedule last weekend. It adds late-night service, changes schedules to reduce delays, and adds more capacity on some routes. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A heightened level of security is coming to Winnipeg City Hall. A new walk-through metal detection system will be installed early next year. It follows several high-profile incidents involving elected officials in Manitoba, arsons at the offices of provincial politicians, threats at the municipal level as well. City Councillor Jeff Brawadi.
It's unfortunate. I mean, this is the city's building. This is the people's building. But again, everybody needs to feel safe, whether it's the members of the public, our staff, or elected officials. So unfortunately, the way the world's becoming, security is top of mind.
The new entrance will be installed early next year. Well, fire briefly shut down part of a major street in Winnipeg. CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is at Portage and Banning. Megan?
Yes, well, this morning as fire was called in about 5:27. This is in two vacant buildings at the corner of Portage and Banning. Now, there was an aerial truck that was here. It's now wrapping up and leaving. Fire crews are just checking on some smoldering ashes that are here. Traffic, meanwhile, if you are coming westbound on Portage, you will be turned through a parking lot between Lipton and Burnell. No word on how long Portage westbound will be closed. This is between at Portage and Banning. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Megan. Well, the second night of Hanukkah was marked at Winnipeg City Hall.
As you light the candles of Hanukkah, please know that we stand with you.
Mayor Scott Gillingham lighting a candle on the menorah in front of about 40 people. Many in Winnipeg's Jewish community are reeling from this weekend's shootings in Australia that claimed 15 lives. Gustavo Zentner at the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs in Manitoba says he appreciates the support being expressed by the mayor and other elected officials, but he says words must be followed by action.
We really look to government, to law enforcement agencies, to lay charges, to have unequivocal messaging that indicates there's no place for hate in Manitoba, there's no place for hate in Winnipeg or in Canada, and that the community doesn't stand by itself.
Several Winnipeg police officers were stationed at City Hall during yesterday's ceremony. Businesses got to hear and speak out about the province's proposed supervised consumption site at 366 Henry. Beverly Burkhardt at Winnipeg Inner City Missions says her centre is geared towards children. She thinks Main Street would be a better location for a safe consumption site.
We want the children to come and we want them to play. And as much as we can have safety plans mean to me that we identify that there's a risk. So how about if we just keep the risk out of our neighborhood?
Raymond Wan at the Winnipeg Chinese Cultural and Community Centre doesn't think the site is a fit with long-term plans to revitalize the area.
Why not take it to a different ward next to a hospital? There's care, there's supervision, there's access. Why go into an area that don't have any infrastructure? Why create something that we don't have in terms of support?
Another meeting on the proposed location for the safe consumption site is planned for tonight. Well, they came close.
Stanley, he scores! He's a scoring machine! Logan Stanley does it again!
Logan Stanley in the second period on prime, but the Jets fall 3-2 to the Ottawa Senators in overtime. Coach Scott Arniel.
That was a game that should have been won by us. We got off to a slow start, took a couple penalties. Obviously, penalty kill came up large, but it took us 15 minutes to get going. At the end of the day, these are the games you got to learn to win.
Jets goalie Connor Hellebuck with 28 saves. Winnipeg is now back on the road in St. Louis tomorrow night. You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
And that is CBC's Heather Wells. Abby Adeyemi joins me now. And Abby, I think a lot of folks in southern Manitoba are going to be surprised when they walk out the door this morning.
That's true. I call it a day of shifting skies. You're just going to wake up and you see that mild condition hitting your face. You go, but yesterday my face was hurting.
I was freezing
this morning
yesterday.
It's kind of really, really warming today. But the south is going to be meeting that incoming cold front later in the day. But let's just enjoy this temperatures that should take us to about 3 degrees, because I see across board some regions in the south already touching 7 degrees, like around Morden. We have 7 degrees in that part of the province, and then Melita is at 6 degrees at this time. For Winnipeg, -4. It's clear outside. Expect some sunshine this morning before the clouds return, with a good chance of rain showers and some flurries in the afternoon. It will get windy at some point, and then we'll see a high pushed about 3 degrees, though the temperatures will drop quickly to -8 later today, and then some partly cloudy skies tonight. Tomorrow, we expect snow in the southern part of the province, and lots of snow.
All right. But for now, puddles.
Yeah, but the rest of the southern part of the province, we're seeing temperatures above zero, between 4 and 7 degrees right now, except for Sprague and Steinbach. We're looking at -1s in that part of the province. Up north, we're seeing -10 in Flin Flon, -18 in Thompson, and -20 in Churchill.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Abby Adeyemi. Corey Funk, before we get into the commute, we're going to hear about some Christmas baking and people spending a lot of dough to make their dough.
Yes.
Are you a Christmas baker? I know you bake bread, but are Christmas treats kind of happening right now in your home?
Yes, for sure. We got the gingerbread going on. My mom baked a bunch of gingerbread with my little guy, and we every night as like a treat after dinner, if he eats his supper, we decorate the gingerbread.
Oh, that's
icing.
so fun.
And it's mostly me just kind of batting the icing tube away from his mouth as he tries to just suck it straight out of there. But
that's the best part, though.
Yeah, exactly.
I get it. I get it.
I don't blame him. It's like, it makes sense. It's tasty, but yeah. As for the commute, though, a couple things to keep an eye out for. Of course, as we just heard in the news, there's that fire at Portage and Banning, and that actually has a westbound Portage closed right there at Portage and Banning. Traffic is being rerouted through a parking lot. But as you can imagine, that's going to be very, very slow going westbound Portage this morning. You might want to avoid that if you can. Also got a call from George, northbound Dawson Road, just north of Panet. There's a pickup truck that's kind of gone into the side of the road and been abandoned, and it's blocked the curb lane and a bit of the median lane as well. You can scooch around it, but it's going to slow things down on Dawson for you this morning, but keep left. Other than that, though, if you see anything else, you can give me a call. Down on the bike, also give me a call. He said it's a little bit pebbly out there, like some icy patches here and there, but overall pretty good on the bike lanes around Rapid Transit this morning. If you do see something, though, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Corey.
No problem. Numbers, it's a hard thing this morning.
They are difficult.
204-788-3093.
3093. Thank you. And Crystalie Ramlakan is here with the business report. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Chloe.
So Ford is pulling back on its electric vehicle plans. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the company's flagship EV, the F-150 Lightning, will be put on hold indefinitely. And the automaker expects to take a $19.5 billion hit in the fourth quarter due to the EV business. But it still anticipates strong sales of gas-powered trucks and SUVs. Now, demand for electric vehicles surged in the summer in the U.S., and that was before the expiration of a tax credit for EV buyers. And Ford's EV sales jumped, but those buys only amounted to a small portion of sales. And while the company has not reported fourth quarter sales, outside predictions estimate EV sales fell sharply. Now, we know that automakers overall have invested heavily in EV plans, and this was in anticipation of stringent environmental regulations put in place by the Biden administration. But then the Trump administration rolled back emissions rules along with financial support for EVs. And we know here in Canada, the federal government has also paused a policy that would require automakers to reach certain targets for sales of zero emissions vehicles. And now Ford is looking for ways to use some of its assets to do things other than power EVs. So the company has announced a plan to have some of its EV battery capacity repurposed for energy infrastructure with growing data center demands.
Next, the NASDAQ wants to extend trading hours. What are the details on that?
Yeah, so Reuters is reporting one of the world's largest exchanges that is home to tech companies that we talk a lot about all of the time, such as NVIDIA, Apple, and Amazon, plans to ask the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission to expand trading hours from 16 hours a day to 23 hours a day, 5 days a week. So pretty much all of the time. And, it's really looking to capitalize on a global demand for U.S. equities, and investor demand for nonstop trading has surged in recent years. And that's prompted regulators to introduce new rules and also greenlight proposals from major exchanges to enable trading beyond normal market hours. So in March, the NASDAQ president said the exchange had actually already started discussions with regulators and expected to launch pretty much nonstop trading in the second half of next year. So that is when we might see this actually, come into practice. And the New York Stock Exchange also recently announced plans to move to round-the-clock trading.
And lastly, Merriam-Webster has declared its word of the year, and it has to do with something we talk a lot about in business these days.
Yes, that's right. So the dictionary has named slop its word of the year, as in AI slop, which is, kind of a growing wariness around artificial intelligence. That's what it kind of shows. So slop is now defined as digital content of low quality that is produced usually in quantity by means of artificial intelligence. And, social networks have been flooded with AI-generated content. In September, Meta launched a separate feed for AI-generated videos. Days later, OpenAI released its Sora app, which has, created so many interesting videos out there on social media and shocking, strange videos, things that catch your attention. And those platforms, along with TikTok, YouTube, and others, are increasingly rife with AI slop, which, can often generate revenue with enough engagement. And sometimes it's hard not to engage with these very strange, looking videos, very interesting looking content out there. And even Spotify says it had to remove over 75 million AI generated tracks from its service and had to roll out formal policies to protect artists from AI impersonation and deception.
Fascinating stuff, Crystalie. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chloe.
That was Crystalie Ramlakan with the Business News. When you think of imported luxury, what pops into your head? A Rolex, maybe a Ferrari? CBC producer Danielle Nerman finds some Canadians are splashing out right now for something rich, silky, and French. And if you're thinking a scarf from Hermes, that's not it.
When Yusuf Treya is feeling really decadent, he cuts himself a slice of brie and slathers it with butter. Not just any butter, French butter.
When you eat it, it's like you're eating whipped cream almost.
Yusuf owns a small grocery store in Calgary called Bridgeland Market. He carries a lot of local stuff like produce and meat, but leading up to the holidays, when it's time for Christmas baking, Yusuf brings in 5-kilo buckets of French butter and sells them for $350.
The importation tax is something like 200%. It's astronomical, right?
The tariff on foreign butter is actually 298.5%. It's how Canada protects its dairy industry. Yep, that's supply management, folks. Despite the price, Yusuf always sells out of Le Beurre because
You don't make friends with salad. You make friends with fat.
You don't win friends with salad. You don't win friends with salad.
most of the Canadian butter you'll find at grocery stores has 80% milk fat. But the fat content in French butter is even higher, between 82 and 86%. And for bakers, that matters. Because, as the saying goes, cooking is art. Baking is science.
I'm always trying to apply the science I've learned during my studies into my baking.
Saeed Mdahoma has a PhD in neuroscience and teaches pastry classes online. He calls himself the pastry nerd. So, let's get nerdy. If you're making pies or tarts and you use French butter, Saeed says the dough is much easier to work with.
Because it has less water, it's less likely to stick to your rolling pin if you're trying to spread it. The other thing that makes French butter, high-fat butter, really good is how it has a high melting point.
This is important when you're baking pastries like croissants.
You want those croissants to rise, and rising happens at room temperature. Regular butter will tend to melt at room temperature, but high-fat butter will not melt unless it's really, really hot, so it's better to use French butter for that reason.
Now, it's not like there isn't a Canadian version of this magical super high-fat butter. A few dairies do make it, but...
Okay, it hurts me to say that because I'm both French and now I'm Canadian, so I don't want to pick sides, but actually, yeah, French butter is slightly better when it comes to taste.
And it is about a third of the price in France. But if you're thinking of bringing a few blocks back in your luggage, that's a no-no. Last year, travelers faced more than $80,000 in fines for smuggling butter into Canada. French butter can be imported commercially. That's why Yusuf Treya can stock it and has already sold more than 200 kilos. And he does put some aside for himself, but keeps it under lock and key because there was that one year when he forgot to put it away after a big party.
I'm passed out on my couch, and all I hear is this smacking. And there's my cat staring at me with butter all over his face.
Sanford helped himself to about $15 worth of French butter.
He's got that fancy taste. He's high-fluting.
For the cost of living, I'm Danielle Nerman.
I think I'm kind of jealous of that cat. For more stories about how money shapes our lives in ways big and small, you can check out the Cost of Living podcast. Find it wherever you get your podcasts, or catch the show Sundays at noon and Tuesdays at 11:30 a.m. right here on CBC Radio 1.
Just how does a plant become illegal? Terry O'Reilly is one toke over the line, leaving no stone unturned, exploring the history of cannabis and how it's marketed. From high-end retail stores now selling expensive paraphernalia to celebrities who have their own brands. On Under the Influence, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
The time is 6:49. You are listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen. Now, coming up in our next hour, if you like a good movie night, you want to tune in, we're going to take you through a must-watch movie list featuring theatrical releases that were filmed right here in Manitoba. That is coming up in the next hour of Information Radio. But first, the House of Commons has wrapped, but not without drama. Two Conservatives who came to Ottawa to start the fall session will return home as Liberals. 2025 also saw many other changes on Parliament Hill. For more, we have reached Ryan Tumulty. He's a political reporter with the Toronto Star. Welcome back to the show, Ryan.
Good morning.
So looking back at this past fall session, what could Liberals point to as a success?
Yeah, that's interesting because inside the House of Commons, their successes were pretty few. They got very little legislation through. Obviously, they survived that budget confidence vote, but their budget implementation bill didn't actually move very far forward. Their crime bills are stalled. A lot of the things that they are trying to do are just not moving through the House. Now, that said, attracting two floor crossers is a success, as is the deal that they signed with Alberta. The Prime Minister has had a fair bit of success internationally, attracting trade and investment with other countries, which, of course, we desperately need in this trade war. So overall, I think they would say it's a success, but I think they've really struggled to see those successes in the House of Commons.
How do you think the Conservatives would view fall 2025?
There again, kind of a mixed bag. Obviously, the Conservatives are not happy about the direction of things, losing the two floor crossers, another MP resigning. It's a lot on them right now, and I think it's a lot of pressure on the party and a lot of bad headlines. That said, if you look at the overall polling numbers, the Conservatives are still neck and neck with the Liberals. This is still a very close race. If an election were held, they'd have a legit shot at a majority government. So, I think that's a success for them. And, when I talk about the Liberals not being able to pass bills, it's the Conservatives who've really ensured that. They're the official opposition, and they've opposed a lot. I think they would see a lot of successes in what they've been able to get done in the House of Commons, but certainly, the floor crossers right now are an issue for them.
And if another floor crossing occurred, it would bring a majority government for the Liberals. What do we know about Conservative efforts to prevent this?
Yeah, I'm sure those efforts are underway. I think it is a challenge. The Liberals are certainly looking for that other floor crosser because it means so much to them. The Conservatives can check in with their MPs. They can do everything they can to try to make sure they're happy. But these decisions tend to get made very privately. And all of the Conservative MPs, like all MPs, are out in their ridings now. They're far away from, Ottawa, where the party might be able to influence them. So I think that's going to be a real challenge for the party. And on some level, if someone wants to cross the floor, there's very little you can do to stop it.
Ryan, how would you contrast this time last year to where Liberals are in this moment?
Wow. I mean, what a year. If you think about where we were actually today, 1 year ago today, Chrystia Freeland resigned from her post as finance minister on the very day she was supposed to deliver the fall economic statement. That threw the party into chaos. There was a caucus revolt. Justin Trudeau resigned. The polling numbers couldn't have been lower. They were headed for basically an historic wipeout. Now, they are on the doorstep of a majority government after everything that happened. So the Liberals are in a much better position that they were in a year ago, and have really changed a lot about the party. They've changed a lot of their policy as well. So it's a much different party right now.
Time certainly flies. It's hard to believe that was a year ago today.
Yeah, it does feel like it has been like a decade all crammed into a year.
Lastly here, during the fall 2025 session, what narratives did you see the Liberals and the opposition parties develop that are likely to continue into 2026?
Yeah, I think the electorate is really broken up, not just in who they think has the right answers, but in what they think the problems are. So, Liberal voters are most worried about Trump and the bigger economic picture. And I think that's what the Liberals are going to focus on. Conservative voters are really focused on affordability. They're focused on the cost of living, groceries, those sorts of things. Immigration is a big thing for conservative voters right now. So I think you're going to see the Conservatives focus on that as the year goes forward.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Ryan. Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Ryan Tumulty is a political reporter with the Toronto Star. You are listening to Information Radio. The time is 6:55. Time to head to Heather Wells with news headlines. Oh, we will head to Heather shortly here, but just an update on the traffic. A fire has closed all lanes on westbound Portage at Banning. Traffic is being rerouted through the Shoppers Drug Mart parking lot. Crews are starting to pack up. They're starting to leave, but now westbound Portage at Banning is still closed, so there will still be some lingering issues in that area.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world. Staying on top of stories around the globe. And connected close to home. It's news you can trust. Delivered when you want and where you want. On Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1. Local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
We are looking at a high of +3 today in the city of Winnipeg. Mainly sunny skies, increasing cloudiness this morning, then a 60% chance of rain showers early this afternoon, turning into a 60% chance of flurries later in the afternoon. Wind southwest 30, gusting to 50, becoming northwest 50, gusting to 70 near noon. So definitely a eventful day in the weather. I would be prepared for kind of anything today. Abby Adiemi will have more in the next hour about your weather forecast. It's time to turn to Heather Wells with news headlines.
Good morning. Well, businesses had their say and a chance to ask questions about a proposed safe consumption site at 366 Henry last night. Raymond Wan at the Winnipeg Chinese Cultural and Community Centre doesn't think the site is a fit with long-term plans to revitalize the area. He wonders why the site can't be put next to a hospital where there's both care and access. Winnipeg developer Andrew Marquis has been ordered to pay the city of Winnipeg $800,000 in court costs. Marquis's lawyer calls the ruling on the costs a victory because the city wanted $2 million. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Still to come on Information Radio, many of us know the story of Jesus being born in a stable because there was no room at the inn, but is that exactly true? We are going to hear from our religion columnist, John Longhurst, who will take us through the events in that scene, the stars, the wise men, and the stables, and we'll see if it matches with what the Bible says about the birth of Jesus. Also still to come, from the humble prairies to the silver screen, we'll hear all about the Hollywood films released this year that feature a piece of our province. And also coming up in our 7 o'clock hour, multiple outreach groups have been calling on the city to rethink how they enforce the new encampment rules, saying there's not enough temporary housing to go around. We are going to hear from city officials about how they think the plan is working. Those stories and much more still to come on Information Radio. Stay with us.
On The Current.
It's a political earthquake.
Quebec provincial politics are in turmoil. The governing party is fighting with doctors. The Quebec Liberals are under criminal investigation after allegations of vote buying. And the Parti Québécois is promising a referendum.
Quebec wants self-determination, democratic self-determination.
What is going on in Quebec? It's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Today, Canada will release its plan to slash a potent greenhouse gas, methane. CBC obtained an early copy of the announcement. It contains new measures to achieve significant emissions reductions. But as David Thurton reports, it also offers more flexibility to the oil and gas industry.
That hissing sound is from an oil well in Alberta that's been leaking methane and other hydrocarbons. Methane is a greenhouse gas, 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Methane pollution is supercharging the planet's warming.
I'm really looking forward to being able to publish those regulations for enhanced methane regulations shortly.
CBC News has learned Environment and Climate Change Minister Julie DeBruzen will unveil new measures today. DeBruzen hinted the new rules were coming in a year-end interview.
Now we've committed to enhanced regulations, not only on oil and gas, but also on landfills.
Methane emissions come from many places, including rotting food and garbage dumps. But Canada's largest source of methane pollution is the fossil fuel sector and their leaky valves, pipes, and how they refine their products. Through new regulations, the federal government will ban, with exceptions, oil and gas facilities from venting methane into the atmosphere. But they are also giving companies some leeway to come up with their own approach after pushback from industry. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
A Canadian delegation, including 5 Liberal MPs, has been denied entry to Israel. They were trying to enter by road from Jordan, and they were planning to visit Jerusalem and then travel on to the Israeli-occupied West Bank. NDP MP Jenny Kwan is also part of the delegation. She says they were planning to visit Palestinians who have been affected by settler violence and live in displacement camps.
The issue that we're pushing for is really grounded on human rights, basic human rights and humanitarian action. Having a chance to getting closer to the issue, talking to the people firsthand, I don't think that could be replaced.
The Canadian delegation also plans to meet with the Palestinian Authority, which administers part of the occupied territory. The trip was sponsored by the Canadian Muslim Vote, a Muslim-registered nonprofit in Canada. The Israeli government declined to comment on the visit. Hundreds of mourners are showing up at Bondi Beach. They are bringing flowers, messages of love, and rejecting the anti-Semitic attack that happened there on Sunday. There are calls for justice for the 15 people who were killed on the beach and also calls for stronger gun laws. The CBC's Georgie Smythe is in Sydney with the latest.
People stand dazed, staring at a swelling memorial for the lives lost in Bondi. Australian Jews who were hunted at the country's most iconic beach, says Australian Federal Police Commissioner Chrissy Barrett.
It appears the alleged killers were interested only in a quest for a death tally.
Slowly, the public is learning more about the victims gunned down at the Hanukkah event at the weekend, and more about the alleged gunmen, a father and son, who had 2 homemade ISIS flags. Australia's public broadcaster reports both men travelled to the Philippines last month for military-style training. The son who survived the attack is still in hospital, awaiting significant charges. New gun laws are on the way, says Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
Limiting the number of guns an individual can own, the type of guns that are legal, whether gun ownership should require Australian citizenship.
No matter how much darkness, one little light can shine up.
Rabbi Yaskov Barber lives and works in Bondi. He called on mourners to fight back against divisions.
If we let what happened on Sunday flourish, not just the Jews, it's the whole society will decay.
Police are expected to take down crime scene tape in the next day, returning this much-loved public space to Australians to heal. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Sydney.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says there will be no lasting peace in Ukraine unless Russia is forced to obey international rules. And he says the best way to do that is to hit Russian President Vladimir Putin where it hurts.
Putin does not believe in people. He believes only in power and in money. He spends around 30,000 soldiers' lives on the front every month. Not wounded, 30,000 each month killed. Russians don't count their debt, but they do count every dollar and every euro they lose.
Zelensky was in The Hague this morning addressing Dutch politicians. He urged European leaders to use seized Russian assets to pay for damage caused by Russian aggression in Ukraine. Meanwhile, National Defense Minister David McGuinty says Canada will help boost Ukraine's drone capabilities. He announced Canada will donate another $50 million to that effort. McGuinty participated in the Ukraine Defense Contact Group meeting today. It brings together more than 50 countries and is co-hosted by Germany and the United Kingdom. The Los Angeles District Attorney is expected to review the case today, looking into the deaths of Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle. Their son, Nick, was arrested late Sunday in connection with the incident. Steve Futterman has more on what's coming next.
By the end of the day, it's possible Rob Reiner's 32-year-old son, Nick, may be formally charged with murder. Yesterday, Police Chief Jim McDonnell announced the arrest.
We have our Robbery Homicide Division handling the investigation. They worked on this case and were able to take into custody Nick Reiner. He was subsequently booked for murder.
Right now, he is being held without bail. Nick Reiner had battled numerous mental health challenges over the years, including substance abuse. In 2015, he and his father co-wrote the film Being Charlie, which was based on Nick Reiner's struggles. At that time, Rob Reiner talked about hope.
Well, he's been good now for 3 years. I mean, he's doing great, and he's writing another thing, and yeah.
Numerous tributes continue to be paid to Rob Reiner. Those have been somewhat overshadowed, though, by remarks from Donald Trump. Reiner had been very critical of Trump over the years, but few expected this after the violent killings.
He became like a deranged person, Trump derangement syndrome. So I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all.
As the investigation goes on, there are reports that Nick Reiner's parents had become concerned about his behavior in recent weeks. And there are other reports that just hours before the killings, Nick Reiner and his father had a very loud argument during a Christmas party. Steve Futterman, CBC News, Los Angeles.
U.S. President Donald Trump is suing the BBC for $5 billion U.S. Trump is accusing the broadcaster of defamation. It relates to an edit made to a speech Trump gave on January 6, 2021. That was the day his supporters stormed the Capitol. Trump says the edit intentionally misrepresented the meaning of what he said. The lawsuit was filed in Florida. The BBC says the edit was an error of judgment and apologized, and 2 leaders resigned. We've reached that time of year when many Canadians head south, but this is travel in the midst of a trade war. And as Karen Pauls tells us, some snowbirds are skipping over the United States and landing in Mexico.
So, have you guys decided on where you would like to go?
Charles Burt and Marilee Mollard are getting advice from their travel agent on where to travel this winter.
Well, on the bucket list is Puerto Vallarta.
They usually spend weeks or even months at a trailer park in Westlaco, Texas, but not this year.
Since the election of Trump and the insults that he placed on our country, 51st state and all of that garbage, we decided that no, we're not going to spend money down there.
They're not the only ones making that decision. According to the Ministry of Tourism in Mexico, the number of Canadians flying to Mexico increased by 11.3% between January and September compared to the year before, an increase of almost 200,000 tourists. Meanwhile, the U.S. National Travel and Tourism Office reports a 24% drop in Canadian tourism during the first 6 months of this year.
Well, we are seeing really a
meaningful realignment, as I would refer to, of Canadians booking less to the U.S.
Amra Durakovic is with the Flight Centre Travel Group in Toronto.
Year to date, we've seen on average a 37% decrease of new bookings from Canada to the U.S.
Yeah, there's tons to do in Puerto Vallarta. You won't be bored.
Good.
Perfect.
Back in Manitoba, where winter has settled in, this couple is looking forward to their Mexican vacation.
You can make the choice. You can support Canada, support Mexico.
Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in this morning for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on our YouTube live stream or anywhere you get your CBC Listen app. Thank you for joining us. Coming up on the show, we'll take you through a must-watch movie list featuring the theatrical releases that were filmed right here in Manitoba. As well, multiple outreach groups have been calling on the city to rethink how they enforce the new encampment rules, saying there's not enough temporary housing to go around. We will hear from city officials. But first, odds are you've seen a nativity scene depicted on someone's front lawn, in front of a church, or even on your own mantle. But how do the events in that scene, stars, wise men, and stables, match with what the Bible says about the birth of Jesus? We'll find out. But first, it's time for news headlines with CBC's Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, when Winnipeg Transit overhauled its bus network this summer, the city promised faster and more reliable service. But new data shows more riders are being left behind as full buses pass them by. We're going to take you to a transit stop coming up. And a heightened level of security is coming to Winnipeg City Hall. A new walk-through metal detection system is going to be installed at the entrance early in the new year. And this comes as one councillor hired 2 private guards last week for an event in her ward. We'll hear why Janice Lukes felt she had to take that measure. That's coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Also on the team this morning, Darren Morash is our YouTube live stream producer, and Abby Adiemi is here with a look at the forecast. Good morning.
Good morning once again. Just tracking that mild condition we're enjoying in the south for now. That will quickly turn cold as that system moves through. For Winnipeg right now, we're still around -4, -3, depending on where you are in the city. It is clear outside. Expect some early morning sunshine to come our way before the clouds will move in, and then we'll see that good chance of rain showers and some flurries in the afternoon. It will be a windy day, so be prepared for that. That will push our high to about 3 degrees later, but the temperature after enjoying that 3 degrees would drop sharply to about -8 as we approach the evening period. And then tomorrow we're going to see those partly cloudy conditions and the system moving away from the Brandon, Saskatchewan end. Then we'll see a snowy Wednesday where we'll see our highs around -4. But for now, the southern part of the province really enjoying this mild stat. We're looking at +4s and +7s in the southern part of the province. But every region, I see a good chance of rain showers changing to snow in the south. Up north, it's still bitterly cold out there. We're looking at wind chill in the values of -47 around Churchill at this time. So take it easy up there. For Winnipeg right now, we are at -4.
I can't stop staring at the map. That you can see it if you're watching on YouTube and seeing Morden and 7. So shout out to my hometown. You're enjoying some warm weather today. Corey Funk is here, not from Morden.
I think I might go to Morden, though, after work, though.
Right, just take a quick drive.
Tropical vacation.
Exactly.
A couple things to keep an eye out for there on the road. So the fire at Portage and Banning, there's, last I heard from Megan Ketchison, our reporter who's on scene there, crews were just packing up, but that still does mean that westbound Portage entirely is closed right at that intersection there. It's in that building. It's right beside the Liquor Mart building there. Just west of the Liquor Mart building. So that fire's there. Westbound Portage is closed right at that intersection. Traffic was being rerouted through that Shoppers Drug Mart, Liquor Mart parking lot there. It takes you to Lipton and back onto Portage. So heads up there. It's going to be probably very slow going westbound Portage this morning before that. Other than that, though, also heard from George, northbound Dawson Road, just north of Panet. There was an abandoned pickup truck that's kind of lodged itself on the curb there, and it's blocking the curb lane and part of the median lane as well. But you can sneak around it, he says, but might be very slow going on northbound Dawson this morning as well because of that. Bike lane's looking good, says down on a bike as well on rapid transit. If you do see something though going on, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. We'll love to get some updates, particularly on what folks are seeing on westbound Portage today. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
It's almost Christmas, time for trees and presents, Santa and eggnog, and all the other traditional trappings of the holiday, like carols. That is, of course, the classic carol, Away in a Manger. It talks about the birth of Jesus in a stable among the animals because there was no room at the inn. But what do we really know about this event, and where does our knowledge about it come from? Here to talk about that is John Longhurst. He's our faith contributor at CBC Manitoba. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
So what do we know about the original Christmas story?
Well, what most Canadians probably know about the Christmas story is from seeing outdoor crushes, nativity pageants, or singing carols. In those tellings, the events recorded in the Bible are conflated. It's like everything and everyone is happening all at once, and that's not really quite the way it happened. In fact, the Bible contains two different versions of the Christmas story. In the Gospel of Matthew, there is no journey to Bethlehem, no shepherds, and the wise men, who were likely astrologers and certainly not kings, visit the Holy Family as much as 2 years later when Jesus is a toddler. We don't know their names, and we don't know how many showed up. Eastern religious tradition suggests that there were 12 of them. As for the Gospel of Luke, he has a journey to Bethlehem, along with angels and shepherds. And of course, the young couple can't find a room. He doesn't have any wise men in his story. The pageants we know draw ideas from both accounts: mangers and stables, shepherds and sheep, wise men following a star, angels in the sky. To put it another way, those pageants are like how some movies today are inspired by real events, but aren't factual retellings. And that includes one of the biggest misconceptions about the Christmas story, that Jesus was born in a stable.
This is like every nativity scene I've ever seen. It has the stable. So if he wasn't born in a stable, where was he born?
He was probably born in a house, but not like the houses we think of today. Back then, many homes in the Middle East had two distinct sections: the front part of the house where the family lived, and the back part where the animals were kept safe and warm at night. It wasn't unlike the pioneer house barns that were built in Canada in the 19th century and that you can still find as museums in southern Manitoba, built by Mennonites. When Mary and Joseph arrived in Bethlehem, Luke wrote there was no room in the Kataluna. That Greek word was mistranslated as inn. In fact, as biblical scholars have noted, it means guest room. In other words, when they arrived at the home of their relatives in Bethlehem, they found that the guest room in the front of the house was already taken. Rather than put them out in the cold, which was something unthinkable then as it is today, they were offered a place to sleep in the back part of the house with the animals, where it was warm and safe and dry.
So if there's no inn, there's no innkeeper then, is there?
That's right. So without an inn, there's also no kid in a pageant who has to play the heartless innkeeper,
Oh.
that person who made a pregnant woman go give birth in a barn. After all these centuries of being in the bad books, he's off the hook.
So let's bring Christmas home a bit. When did Canadians start celebrating Christmas?
The first recorded Canadian Christmas took place in 1535, close to what is now Quebec City. It was celebrated by the French explorer Jacques Cartier and his crew during their expedition to what became known as Canada. But Christmas itself didn't become an official Canadian holiday with a day off until 1871, although of course it was celebrated in churches long before that. As for many of the traditional customs we associate with Christmas, things like gift giving, Santa Claus, eggnog, and Christmas trees, those were introduced during the 19th and 20th centuries.
One thing that is considered quintessentially Canadian is the Huron Carol. What can you tell us about that?
So the Huron Carol was written by Jean de Brébeuf, a 17th century French Jesuit missionary. He spent time with the Wendat people, called the Huron by the French. He wanted to share the story of Jesus with them, so he wrote a song in their language. He used images and ideas that would resonate with them in their culture, and it's widely considered Canada's first Christmas song. But that's not the song or the version of the song that we sing today.
So what version do we sing?
We sing the version that was written in 1926 by Jesse Edgar Middleton, a choir director from southwestern Ontario. His opening stanza is familiar to many of us. "'Twas in the moon of winter time when all the birds had fled, that mighty Gitche Manitou sent angel choirs instead." And they're lovely lyrics, but they're not the original. Middleton took a lot of liberties with the text, including using the Algonquin name for God, Gitche Manitou, not the Wendat name for God. And his version is loved by many, but others are uncomfortable with it for a few reasons. First, there's the church's terrible record of trying to convert Indigenous people to Christianity, including through residential schools. And then there's Middleton's version, which has an overly romanticized and paternalistic view of Indigenous people, with lines like "the children of the forest." As a result, some churches have chosen to exclude the Huron Carol from their repertoire out of respect for Indigenous people today.
John, any final thoughts on Christmas?
Sure. Here in Winnipeg, Jerry Bowler is a former University of Manitoba history professor who's written 3 books about Christmas. He's known as Professor Christmas, and he is an unabashed supporter of the holiday. Bowler suggests that Christmas has become a holiday almost anyone can celebrate because it is a cultural shapeshifter, ancient but ever-changing, adapting itself across time and countries and cultures, blending Christian and non-Christian elements. For many people today, he says, it's the kind of holiday we all need. It reflects our deep need for hope, peace, and light at a dark time of the year. As Bowler writes, whether or not you believe in the stories of angels or a baby God in a manger, Christmas still calls us to behave differently, to be of good cheer, to lay aside grudges. So pick up that eggnog, shovel your neighbor's walk, hum a carol, call your mother, and believe for a little while at least in peace on earth and goodwill.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, and I'll say to everyone, Merry Christmas.
John Longhurst is a faith contributor with CBC. That was Barbara Joy and Matt Lafayette with We Three Kings. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen. It's time for a look at sports news with CBC's Scott Regehr. Good morning.
Hey, Chloe.
So let's start with hockey, where the Winnipeg Jets ended their homestand on a downer.
Yeah, a bit of one. 3-2 loss to Ottawa, Chloe, where Winnipeg actually had the lead late, but then with Ottawa pulling their goalie, they scored on a screened wrist shot that found its way past Connor Hellebuck that tied things, and then Sens captain Brady Tkachuk won it. Winnipeg coach Scott Arniel was lamenting the missed opportunities.
These are the games you got to learn to win. This was something that we had to find a way at the very end, either to get that third goal, or the other side of it is not to allow the 6-on-5 goal to go in. We got to find a way, however that is. If that's making the next play so it gets out of the zone, if that's blocking a shot, whatever it is, those are the things that you need. We need 2 points. We need them badly.
So the Jets currently 3 points out of the playoffs, and they're back out on the road for their final games before the holiday break, Chloe, beginning tomorrow in St. Louis.
All right, heading to football, where a key member of the Blue Bombers has decided to stay in town.
Yeah, Winnipeg native and Oak Park alumni Brady Oliveira staying in the blue and gold. He signed a 3-year extension to stay with Winnipeg. The team announcing the deal on social media, posting a picture of Brady alongside one of his pooches, Gunner, a golden retriever. Oliveira was set to become a free agent in February, and earlier this offseason indicated that he might test the market.
You talked about, the hometown discount, and yeah, I think everyone knows that. There were some big suitors out there when I did my deal a few years ago, and yeah, this is where I wanted to be, right? But understanding that I don't know how many more years I have to play this game, I owe it to myself to capitalize on that because I work my butt off to put myself in that position to kind of get what I deserve.
Yeah, it turns out Brady can capitalize and stay in town. Already the highest paid running back in the league. 3 Down Nation's reporting that his new deal will have him making about double the next highest running back. But this is all relative. Consider Brady will make $300,000 a season, and the top paid running back in the NFL, I think that's Saquon Barkley, makes over $20 million US.
Whoa, okay.
A little discrepancy
A little
there.
bit different. Let's finish with curling, where a number of players bound for the Olympics are matching up in Saskatoon.
They are. The Canadian Open, Chloe, begins today in that city. 19 of the 20 teams we're going to see at the Olympics are involved. Only Tabitha Peterson's U.S. rink will be missing. So we should get a pretty accurate indication of who might be medal favorites in Italy by the time this Bonspiel's done. As a Grand Slam of curling event, tie games are supposed to be determined by shootouts instead of extra ends now. They're meant to speed up matches with a player from each team throwing rocks with the one closest to the button prevailing. However, since we're so close to the Olympics, where old school rules are still being used and ties will be broken with extra ends, that's what's going to happen, at least during the playoffs in this Canadian Open. Brett Lang is with the curling group, the consortium who run Grand Slam events, and says they will always listen to what competitors want.
They know that they have a voice. That's all we ever really wanted. It wasn't like, yes, we're doing this, and I can't tell you why, but we're doing it. That never felt good, and that's never the case with the slams in general. That's not what they were built on, and it's not how the curling group operates.
The curling group's Brett Lang, who knows a thing or two, of course, about preparing for the Olympics. He was part of Kevin Cooey's team that repped Canada at the Pyeongchang Games, and Brett's also the husband of Jen Jones, who really knows about the Olympics. The Canadian Open getting underway today with Scotland's Bruce Mowat and Canada's Rachel Homan, the defending champions.
Thank you very much, Scott.
You betcha.
That is Scott Regehr with CBC Sports. The time is 7:29. We will be heading to your CBC local news shortly here, but stay with us because coming up, from the humble prairies to the silver screen, we're going to hear about the Hollywood films released this year that feature a piece of our province. It's the perfect season to kind of cozy up and get if you're baking, the holiday treats out and host a little movie night. So stay with us for that story. As well, we're going to hear from the city's acting manager of community development about how the city's new encampment rules are working and what challenges remain. Those stories and more still to come just after your CBC local news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's -2. Enjoy this mild Winnipeg morning because our temperature is going to rise to 3 and then fall to -8 and then flip into a winter storm tomorrow. But for today, becoming windy with a good chance of showers changing to flurries this afternoon. When Winnipeg Transit overhauled its bus network this summer, the city promised faster and more reliable service. But new data shows more riders are being left behind as full buses pass them by. CBC's Cameron McLean reports.
A pass-up happens when a bus is too full to take on new passengers. Between September and November, Winnipeg Transit recorded nearly 7,000 pass-ups, about 1,200 more than during the same period last year. That's an increase of more than 20%. On a cold Winnipeg morning, commuters line up at stops, hoping the next bus has room. For rider Yuna Du, being passed up can throw off her entire trip home.
Feel depressed?
Another commuter, Darian Duclos, takes the bus downtown 5 days a week. He says pass-ups during the afternoon rush have become something he plans around.
I've kind of learned to expect it now.
The city says pass-ups typically rise every September as students return to school. Councillor Janice Luke says while frustrating, pass-ups are still lower than pre-COVID levels.
I think that's a positive thing.
Winnipeg Transit launched a new winter schedule last weekend. It adds late-night service, changes schedules to reduce delays, and adds more capacity on some routes. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A Winnipeg City Councillor hired 2 security guards for an event last week because of safety concerns. Janice Lukes brought them in for a tea and talk in her Waverley West ward. She heard rumblings of a protest over changes to Winnipeg Transit. She wanted to keep herself, the people at the event, and workers at the tea house safe. Lukes says elected officials are seeing an increase in online hate and harassment.
I was getting feedback from citywide that, I'm the most hated person in the city. I'm a dumb animal, really wild comments, right? And I just thought, we'll just have a couple security people there and see what happens.
At City Hall itself, a heightened level of security is coming. A new walk-in metal detection system will be installed at the entrance early next year. About 40 people gathered at Winnipeg City Hall yesterday, marking the second night of Hanukkah.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvah.
Mayor Scott Gillingham helped to light a candle on the menorah, telling the crowd the city stands with the Jewish community as they grapple with the weekend shooting attack in Australia. 15 people were killed at a Hanukkah celebration on Bondi Beach. Rob Waldman is board president of the Hreva Mishnayos Synagogue on Jefferson Avenue.
My own little synagogue has undertaken considerable security measures in the last year, which breaks my heart that it's necessary. But yes, I feel safe.
Waldman says the best way to fight anti-Semitism is by being proud of being Jewish. Businesses had their say and a chance to ask questions about a proposed safe consumption site at 366 Henry last night. Raymond Wan at the Winnipeg Chinese Cultural and Community Centre doesn't think the site is a right fit with long-term plans to revitalize the area.
We worked really hard, almost 12 years to get a project on that piece of vacant land, hoping to have another injection of people coming back to the community or service the community. It looks like we're doing one thing on one side with a different set of theory, but then we have another different set of theory elsewhere. What is the priority?
Beverly Burkhardt at Winnipeg Inner City Missions. It has a community center geared towards children.
Not just disappointing, but it's disheartening and discouraging because the impact on our community is going to be that parents are not going to be comfortable with their children being in our area.
Another public consultation meeting is scheduled for tonight. Fire at Portage and Banning has closed a couple of lanes of westbound Portage. It started around 5:27 this morning in what police say appear to be a couple of vacant buildings. For now, police say westbound Portage is closed between Burnell and Lipton. 2 artificial intelligence companies want to build an AI data center in the Arm of Richot, south of Winnipeg. The companies say they want to power the center with electricity generated from natural gas. Bartley Kivas reports.
In communications to investors, Jet AI and Consensus Core say they want to build a data center on land north of Ildeshane. They want to fuel the plant with 6 gas turbines. The province wants to stop burning gas to generate power, even though Manitoba Hydro is building 3 new gas turbines near Brandon. Manitoba Hydro says it has no knowledge of the Ildeshane proposal. Adrian Sala, the minister responsible for hydro, says the province is choosy about who gets to connect to the electrical grid.
We need to look at every project on its own merits and then determine what the best path forward with the lens on creating the greatest benefits for Manitobans.
Manitoba's climate action team skeptical of the resources required for data centers. Laura Cameron is a program director.
It's unclear how Manitobans would benefit from this very energy intensive and water intensive industry that doesn't create very many jobs at all.
The mayor of Reachot says there is no formal proposal for the data center. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And pushing it to overtime. Neil Pionk in the second period on Prime. Another goal from Logan Stanley, and the Jets would lose, though, to the Senators in overtime 3-2. Coach Scott Arniel says that was a game his team should have won.
We got to find a way, however that is. If that's making the next play so it gets out of the zone, if that's blocking a shot, whatever it is, those are the things that you need. We need 2 points. We need them badly.
Winnipeg's back on the road now in St. Louis tomorrow night. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Show technician Abby Adiyemi is here with another look at your weather forecast. Good morning.
Good morning, Chloe. We're looking at that shift in weather coming our way this morning. Winnipeg right now, -2. Clear conditions outside. The sun is going to be breaking through soon before we see that good chance of rain and some flurries in the mix arrive by the afternoon period. We're going to see the winds turn very gusty near the noon period. A high would get to 3 degrees before the temperature drops quickly, and then we'll see partly cloudy skies and lows around -13. And then the action comes in tomorrow, where we start with a mix of sun and clouds before the heavy snow sweeps in. Similar conditions we're seeing in other parts of the south. The Pembina Valley region, we're looking at 7 degrees and 8 degrees in some regions in the south, depending on where you are. Gusty afternoon ahead, bringing a chance of rain showers and flurries. Most of the regions will see highs around 5. Currently, Brandon at 5 degrees, Dauphin at 7 degrees, and Gimli sitting at -7 at this time. Tracking it up, not much colder, around that -15 in the Par, light snow and drifting conditions in that part of the province. That should end, and you see your temperatures fall to -18 later. Thompson, you're at -18 at this time. Light snow also ending before your temperature falls to -22 by the afternoon period. And then further north in Churchill, we're seeing temperatures around -21 at this time. Light snow blowing there. It's going to stay bitterly cold with the northwest winds whipping things around. The wind chill actually feels like -47 this morning. But for Winnipeg, we are at -2. We're heading to 3 degrees and expecting some rain and snow later.
All right. Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
It's time to turn to Corey Funk with an update on your commute.
Yes. So the biggest issue this morning has been at Portage and Banning, as you've been hearing in the news. The latest we know is that you can assume that westbound Portage is still closed at Banning. We did hear traffic is being rerouted around through that Shoppers Drug Mart parking lot, and then takes you through to Lipton and back onto Portage. So that's what we've heard latest because of that fire there. It's on northbound Portage on the building just west of the Liquor Mart, Shoppers Drug Mart there in a building there. But if you do see anything else going on out there, if you're walking, you're biking, you're driving, you want to let me know what you're seeing out there, what you want to tell me what it's like even on westbound Portage right now in terms of traffic. Would love to hear from you. You can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Corey.
Thank you.
Coming up next, put on your Christmas jammies and grab some popcorn. The holidays are the perfect time to host a good movie night. And if you're looking to see a little more Manitoba on your screen, our next guest has some recommendations. Lynn Skrmita is CEO and Film Commissioner with Manitoba Film and Music. She's here to go over a list of 2025 theatrical releases that were filmed in this province. Welcome to the show, Lynn.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
All right. First up, we've got The Long Walk. Can you remind us what this one is about and where it was filmed?
Yes, so this one is based on a Stephen King novel, and it's about a group of teenage boys who compete in an annual contest known as the Long Walk, in which they must maintain a certain pace, which is 3 miles an hour, to walk across the state of Maine. And then if they don't make it through, then they get shot.
Okay, quite dramatic.
It is.
Remind me where this was filmed. It was a few spots here in the province.
You know, it actually went right across the province from as far east as Whiteshell Provincial Park all the way to St. Lazare, which is 11 minutes from the Saskatchewan border, right? So there was the Whiteshell Provincial Park, Highway 307. Like there's lots of different spots that people are going to recognize, but it doubled very, very well for the state of Maine.
So next we have a film released back in February. Can you tell us about Love Hurts?
Yeah, so this one was a really fun one. It was released on Valentine's Day, and it's about a realtor who's pulled back into the life he left behind after his former partner in crime resurfaces with an ominous message. And it stars Kihei Kwan and Ariana DeBose, along with Sean Astin and Rhys Darby, which you'll recognize from a variety of things that have shot in New Zealand. And it's an action comedy film, and it's just a lot of fun. And it's made by the same folks who've made a few movies here in Manitoba, including the Violent Night series and the Nobody series.
And speaking of Nobody, we're going to talk about Nobody too. What role did Manitoba play in that film?
So once again, the film was entirely shot in Manitoba, and even though the main city is kind of indistinct, they go to a holiday in Plummerville, and that was shot largely in around Winnipeg Beach and Lockport and Selkirk, a little bit around Cooks Creek and Lilac. And it's Sharon Stone, Bob Odenkirk, Christopher Lloyd, Colin Hanks. So a real star-studded show. And it's another one it's a little on the violent side, but it's a lot of fun, and you'll recognize lots of places in and around Manitoba again.
So maybe not like a family movie night.
Maybe not.
Depends how old your family is, you know.
Teenagers love it.
Lastly here, we have a holiday film of sorts, Silent Night, Deadly Night. I have a few guesses, but what's this one about?
So, this is a horror slasher film that's been done a couple of times now. There's been a few reboots and a few remakes, but it's about a child who sees his parents murdered by a man in a Santa suit and then goes on his own little quest of violence. So it's definitely a hardcore horror film, but it's a fun one. It's in theaters right now, and it actually features a lot of Manitoban actors. That's one of the exciting things about this one, is you'll get to see people you recognize when you're kind of walking through the shopping mall.
Oh, that's so cool. Speaking of Christmas movies, Film Training Manitoba has this long list of Manitoba shot holiday movies. What do you think makes our province so well suited for this genre?
Well, you'd think, it's because we have so much winter here. But as most people who live in Winnipeg have seen, a lot of these movies are shot in the summertime. The Exchange District is often decorated just like Christmas all throughout the year. And it's, we have really good incentives here. We have really strong crews here. We've got really experienced people here. We've got, production companies that know how to make these films. We have a director, Jeff Beasley, who's done a number of these films as well. And we've got the talent, we've got the infrastructure. It's just perfect. And so people just love coming back and shooting here.
What does a list like this tell you about Manitoba's film industry, from all these theatrical releases to even the smaller Hallmark Christmas films?
Yeah, I mean, we have a thriving industry here, and it's really exciting. It creates a lot of jobs. It supports a lot of businesses here in Manitoba. So it's really nice to be able to see that we are growing and evolving as an industry as well. We have local producers that are doing great work, but we're also being seen in Hollywood. We're being seen in theatrical releases around the world, and I'm really proud of what we're able to do here, because it is the local crews, it is local actors, it is all that infrastructure that makes it happen.
Lastly here, what are your hopes for the new year?
Well, I mean, I think we're going to continue to be busy. We have a couple of series that are going to be shooting into the new year, and a couple of new series starting up. So, I mean, series are great work for us because they last longer than a movie schedule does. We have a couple more movies actually that have just been announced that'll be coming out in the new year as well that were shot in Manitoba. So you can actually continue to go to the theater, which I'm really excited about too. So in January, on January 9th, The Mother and the Bear will be released in theaters. And the other thing that's exciting about this one is it's actually set in Winnipeg. So it's shot in Winnipeg for Winnipeg, not doubling as another city. And then the other one that was just announced yesterday is a movie called Normal. So when Bob Odenkirk was here last year shooting Nobody 2, he did one right on the heels of that. Was actually exactly this time last year was being shot. And the trailer was just released yesterday. And so you can find that on YouTube.
I've been seeing it all around social media. People are really excited about that one. Lynn, really appreciate your time here, and happy holidays. Happy movie watching.
Thank you so much. You too. Take care.
Lynn Skrmita is CEO and Film Commissioner with Manitoba Film and Music.
Stuff your stocking with laughter. The Winnipeg Comedy Festival is back for its 25th anniversary, and CBC is a proud sponsor. This is your chance to see The Debaters, the mega shows featuring the best of Canadian comedy and all the best homegrown comics making Manitoba laugh. The Winnipeg Comedy Festival, April 20th to 26th. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
The time is 7:46. You are listening to Information Radio. It's been nearly a month since Winnipeg's new encampment bylaw came into effect. Under the bylaw, encampments are not allowed to be set up near schools, daycares, playgrounds, and at other public spaces. Since November 17th, the city says it has cleared 10 encampment sites so far, the most recent being at Mostyn Park. Outreach workers say finding housing or even temporary shelter for people from these encampments has been a struggle. Last week, Jamil Mahmood, the head of Main Street Project, said there just isn't enough housing to go around.
That's not an ideal, recognizing that almost all shelters are full at this time of year, and even our overflow winter pop-up shelter at Siloam is also full every night as well. So it's not a sustainable kind of solution for folks, and it often will lead to a really short-term 1 or 2 nights or 3 nights, and then folks might end up back on the street somewhere else. And so it does create that uncertainty for folks and disconnects them from resources.
That was Jamil Mahmood, head of Main Street Project, speaking with CBC's Felicia Adam. Yesterday on Information Radio, we spoke with Ren Armstrong, team lead with the West Central Women's Resource Centre. She said her team is given very little time to connect folks in encampments with resources.
What happens when people do refuse to leave their encampment area? What kind of enforcement is going to be taken on these people because they don't have anywhere else to go? I'm worried about police involvement.
This morning, we're joined by Greg McPherson, Winnipeg's acting manager of community development, and Lisa Gilmore, assistant chief of community risk reduction with the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service. Good morning to you both.
Morning, Chloe. Good morning.
Greg, what do you make of what we just heard there from both Main Street Project and the West Central Women's Resource Centre?
We have really exceptional outreach workers and outreach partners in the city. Jamil's team at Main Street Project, we've been working with them since 2019. They're very passionate, very strong. They're advocates for the population that they serve. We're very lucky. I think that they're not wrong. We're working right now in a time where there are a lot of people who are living unsheltered, and we're struggling to provide housing across the country. Right, we're in a housing crisis, so. It's a difficult moment for all of us who care deeply about people, and we want to see our neighbors safe. So I don't. I think that I take the best from what Jamil is saying. I think similarly, Ren with West Central Women's Resource Centre. I know Ren, very strong advocate, very good with the population that she serves. So we are, I think, very lucky to have partners like that. This is a new protocol for us, so we're working through it. There's some wrinkles that we need to work on in terms of communications with one another, but I think we're getting there.
When we spoke to you last month, you had previously said that nobody would be removed from encampments before being offered housing first. Has that changed?
No, and we will not move anybody unless there's a criminality issue or a life safety issue. We're not pressing to have people removed from sites without an offer of housing, and that's complicated. But it's minus. Well, today's -1, I think, but it's really dipped. The temperature has gone down in the last couple of weeks, so we're seeing what I think Jamil described there as a shortage of shelter spaces. We don't want to put people into a place where they're not going to be safe. So that's the bottom line for us. We're not pressing to do that. We need to protect our public spaces, but not at the cost of hurting anyone.
Does this mean that even if there are encampments near spaces that the bylaw says they cannot be, more time will be given, or will anything change, or what are you saying here?
Well, I'm saying, firstly, it's not a new bylaw. This is an existing bylaw we've had for many years that restricts people's freedom to camp, basically, in parks. Council's just asked us to adopt a new policy that you described it a few minutes ago, restricts camping in certain sites, from distances from daycares, from train crossings, playgrounds, and we're trying in our the best we can to enforce those restrictions. At this stage, though, we're doing that slowly. In absence of available housing, that looks a little different. If we had a lot of housing at our disposal, our partners, so we don't provide housing. The City of Winnipeg's role in this is garbage removal. We support outreach. We help to manage and fund outreach, and we do enforcement when absolutely necessary. But until we get to that point, there are many steps that are taken in the middle, and we rely on our outreach partners to do that work. That's their role in this.
But it is, we should clarify, this is a city bylaw.
It's a city bylaw. Yeah, the parks bylaw, streets bylaw, and waterways bylaws all restrict where people are allowed to camp in our city.
CBC has heard from some folks in these encampments who say they don't want to go to a shelter for various reasons. Some of them have cited just feelings of safety in these spaces. They say they will just set up camps somewhere else. How concerned are you that this is just kind of chasing the problem around the city?
Well, I think it's, this is an interesting moment we're in. It's complicated. We had a large number of people camping outside all through last year, much more volume than we had experienced previously. There are no easy solutions. We do, as a city, we owe it to our population to support public spaces. We have parks and playgrounds. I have a little boy, he's 5, and I bring him to a playground on a regular basis in splash pads. And we owe it to everyone who wants to access those public spaces to maintain their safety. So encampments are, I like to think of this as a co-occurrent crises. On one hand, we all want to solve homelessness. That's the big picture crisis. On the other hand, we have encampments, and they bring with them a lot of complicated, issues. So we as a city are responsible for trying to manage our public spaces, and that's challenging. There's no easy answers to that, but part of it is to find housing for people. So we work with the provincial government, with our outreach partners. That's their end of this, and we try to support them in the best way we can. And they support us in their way as well. So it's an evolving and I think improving relationship and partnership.
Lisa, I'm curious about the role that the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service plays in supporting outreach during the clearing of these encampments. What's the role?
So our role hasn't actually changed that much with the new protocol. We've always been working in encampments. We've always been speaking to encampments, the individuals living in encampments about fire safety. And we've been working closely with outreach on fire safety too, to make sure that message is clear. I think one area where there was some misinformation around the Mostyn Park one was with the cleanup. So after any fire in an encampment, our teams will go in and we will put tape around the area that's burnt, and we'll order cleanup with Public Works. Often when that occurs, the individuals living in the encampment will then bring additional garbage that needs to be cleaned up into that taped off area. So it looks like there's more there than what was initially burnt. And that cleanup in Granite a couple of weeks ago was just the cleanup of the burnt up area. So that's one way that we've been working closely with outreach and with the individuals living in encampments, and we've been doing that for over a year.
So you're not actively removing items from folks who are actively living there?
No, we tape the area up, and if they want to add items to that, that would be included in the encampment. We'll also tape up vacant encampments that we find as we go about our check-in on encampments, and those would also get taped up for cleanup.
What challenges has your team had on the ground when enforcing this plan or entering these spaces?
I think encampments can be dangerous spaces. I'll say during a fire, you're often unsure what's in there. So it's always dangerous for our crews. But it's also dangerous for fires in encampments for the individuals that are living there and for everybody living around the encampments and for anybody who's working in and out of them too. And so there's a lot of unknowns when we enter into encampment spaces. And then certainly at this time of year when people are trying to stay warm, we do see more fires increase in the encampments.
Greg, I want to ask you about the idea of a triage site or organized encampment zone. Councillor Ross Eady says he wants to turn the Louise Bridge encampment into a triage site that would have supports for people as they transition from an encampment into housing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we've been asked to do some research into that subject, the idea of a managed encampment site. We've been given, I think, a couple of months to provide a report. So I don't have a lot to offer at this stage, but I know that other cities have had experience doing that. And it's mixed results. Some cities have done well. Other cities have struggled and canceled the approach. But we'll provide that information for council in a couple of months.
I believe Councillor Cindy Gilroy visited Halifax to look at this?
That's right.
Okay. So the city is taking this into account and is creating a report, you're saying?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah. Last week at EPC, we were directed to provide a report back that provides a list of information that gives the councillors a chance to fully understand their options and adopt a platform or way forward that makes the most sense for them.
What sort of lessons has the city learned so far that might lead to changes in how this bylaw is enforced in the future?
Well, I think it's a matter of collaboration. You know, we have the resources that we have are finite. I think we're learning our responsibility as a city. We weren't expecting the degree of encampment size that we experienced last year. It was a challenge. We also had hopes, I think. We put a lot of faith in our provincial partners who are amazing, and they're working really hard to provide new units of housing and to try to solve that crisis of the housing shortage. We're contributing in our own way as well, but I think that without the adequate supply of units, and if people still persist in camping outside throughout the year, it creates, a unique set of circumstances that's not always easy to mitigate or to control. So we're learning as we go. It's an evolving situation. I think that my real hope in all this, and the thing that I hang my hat on, is that we all mean well. Everybody wants the same thing. We want to protect our vulnerable neighbors. We want to be sure that our public spaces are accessible, and we want to try to house people who need the housing. So.
Greg, Lisa, thank you so much for making the time to join us this morning.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That was Greg McPherson, Winnipeg's acting manager of community development, and Lisa Gilmore, assistant chief of community risk reduction. Still to come. Oh, just kidding. We're going to move on. Looking at our weather, our commute, CBC. Just kidding. We're turning to news with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, when Winnipeg Transit overhauled its bus network this summer, the city promised faster and more reliable service, but new data shows more riders are being left behind as full buses pass them by. The second night of Hanukkah was marked at Winnipeg City Hall last night. Mayor Scott Gillingham lighting a candle on the menorah in front of about 40 people. He says the city stands with the Jewish community following that attack at a Hanukkah celebration in Australia that left 15 people dead. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Still to come.
I mean, it's like, I've kind of learned to expect it now, so I'll hop out there and I'm just like, okay, people see the blue coming and they'll start lining up and I'm like, funny,
CBC has been looking into Winnipeg Transit data, which shows thousands of pass-ups. That means a bus is too full to stop and pick up new passengers. Since September, we'll bring you all the details of that story. Still to come.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. A Canadian delegation, including 5 Liberal MPs, have been denied entry into the occupied West Bank by Israel. They were trying to enter by road from Jordan. NDP MP Jenny Kwan is also part of the delegation. She says they wanted to visit Palestinians who had been affected by settler violence and live in displacement camps.
The issue that we're pushing for is really grounded on human rights, basic human rights and humanitarian action. Having a chance to getting closer to the issue, talking to the people firsthand, I don't think that could be replaced.
The Canadian delegation also had plans to meet with the Palestinian Authority, which administers part of the occupied territory. The trip was supposed to be and sponsored by the Canadian Muslim Vote, a Muslim registered nonprofit in Canada. The Israeli government declined to comment on the visit. Hundreds of mourners are showing up at Bondi Beach. They are bringing flowers, messages of love, and rejecting the anti-Semitic attack that happened there on Sunday. There are calls for justice for the 15 people who were killed on the beach, and also calls for stronger gun laws. The CBC's Georgie Smythe is in Sydney with the latest.
People stand dazed, staring at a swelling memorial for the lives lost in Bondi. Australian Jews who were hunted at the country's most iconic beach, says Australian Federal Police Commissioner Chrissy Barrett.
It appears the alleged killers were interested only in a quest for a death tally.
Slowly, the public is learning more about the victims gunned down at the Hanukkah event at the weekend, and more about the alleged gunmen, a father and son, who had 2 homemade ISIS flags. Australia's public broadcaster reports both men travelled to the Philippines last month for military-style training. The son who survived the attack is still in hospital, awaiting significant charges. New gun laws are on the way, says Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
Limiting the number of guns an individual can own, the type of guns that are legal, whether gun ownership should require Australian citizenship.
No matter how much darkness, one little light can shine up.
Rabbi Yaskov Barber lives and works in Bondi. He called on mourners to fight back against divisions.
If we let what happened on Sunday flourish, not just the Jews, it's the whole society will decay.
Police are expected to take down crime scene tape in the next day, returning this much-loved public space to Australians to heal. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Sydney.
The most vulnerable people around the world are not getting the help they need. That is the warning today from a global humanitarian group. The International Rescue Committee is releasing its annual report. It looks into the 20 countries most at risk of a widening humanitarian crisis in 2026. Sudan is at the top of that list for the 3rd year in a row, followed by the occupied Palestinian territories and South Sudan. Kieran Donnelly is a vice president at the IRC. He says humanitarian funding globally is half of what it was last year.
What our clients and teams around the world are living on a daily basis is a world shaped by power politics, geopolitical rivalry, and transactional deal-making. And that shift is driving both sides of the humanitarian emergency that we're witnessing today, a surge in crisis and need and a collapse in global support.
Donnelly says more than ever, war is being turned into a profitable enterprise. He says 98 countries are involved in wars beyond their own borders, and there are more active wars now than at any time since the Second World War. The cleanup is starting in British Columbia's Fraser Valley. The region is getting more rain, but with less intensity. Rainfall warnings have been downgraded from orange to yellow. But as Aaron Collins explains, the situation is different south of the border.
We don't think it's going to get to where it's scary.
Turns out David McBride was right. Despite heavy rain, the Fraser Valley avoided the worst. McBride says flooding is always a risk here.
It could come up. It's living in the valley. It always could come up, right? Like that's part of living here.
Connie Chapman with BC Water Management confirms the risk of more flooding has passed for now.
The weather event that we had been watching has now since passed. Peak flows in streams are occurring and will continue to occur over the next couple hours before starting to recede.
Environment Canada had warned of more flooding for the area, but it didn't materialize. Across the border in Washington state, residents weren't as lucky. A breached levee leading to a flash flood warning and more evacuations. Brendan McCluskey is Director of Emergency Management in Washington's King County.
From this area, it was mostly industrial and commercial. I don't think there were any residential areas, but we've had evacuations in other places, and probably upwards of 500 have been evacuated.
Back in BC, most evacuees have been allowed to return home. Officials there say the worst of the rain has now passed. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Abbotsford, BC.
The Trump administration says construction of a new White House ballroom must proceed. Officials say it's a matter of national security. U.S. President Donald Trump has championed the project to replace the White House's East Wing. The price tag is reportedly in the hundreds of millions of dollars. The CBC's Willie Lowry has more from Washington. And Willie, how did this argument come about?
It's part of a lawsuit filed by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, asking a federal judge to stop the Trump administration's construction of that White House ballroom. The administration filing papers yesterday saying construction can't stop because it would pose an unspecified national security concern. In the 36-page filing, the deputy director of the U.S. Secret Service said even a temporary halt on the current site demolition would, quote, consequently hamper the agency's ability to carry out its mandate. Of course, demolition started in October. The trust is arguing that the administration fast-tracked the process and didn't go through a proper review process. In its lawsuit, the trust said, quote, no president is legally allowed to tear down portions of the White House without any review whatsoever. Not President Trump, not President Biden, and not anyone else. And no president is legally allowed to construct a ballroom on public property without giving the public the opportunity to weigh in.
The East Wing has already been demolished. So what can they do at this stage?
Well, something will have to replace what was the East Wing. President Trump has long argued that the White House was in desperate need of a space large enough to accommodate big groups of people. But the ballroom won't just be big. At 90,000 square feet, it will dwarf the White House. The National Trust for Historic Preservation, a nonprofit tasked by Congress to protect and preserve historic sites, said it would be open to working with the White House and other entities to ensure that the ballroom that emerges is more in line with the White House while still meeting the administration's needs. A hearing in the case is expected later today in Washington.
Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Willie Lowry in Washington. We have reached that time of year when many Canadians head south, but this is travel in the midst of a trade war. And as Karen Pauls tells us, some snowbirds are skipping over the United States and landing in Mexico.
So, have you guys decided on where you would like to go?
Charles Burt and Marilee Mollard are getting advice from their travel agent on where to travel this winter.
Well, on the bucket list is Puerto Vallarta.
They usually spend weeks or even months at a trailer park in Weslaco, Texas, but not this year.
Since the election of Trump and the insults that he placed on our country, 51st state and all of that garbage, we decided that no, we're not going to spend money down there.
They're not the only ones making that decision. According to the Ministry of Tourism in Mexico, the number of Canadians flying to Mexico increased by 11.3% between January and September compared to the year before, an increase of almost 200,000 tourists. Meanwhile, the U.S. National Travel and Tourism Office reports a 24% drop in Canadian tourism during the first 6 months of this year.
Well, we are seeing really a meaningful realignment, as I would refer to, of Canadians booking less to the U.S.
Amra Durakovic is with the Flight Centre Travel Group in Toronto.
Year to date, we've seen on average a 37% decrease of new bookings from Canada to the U.S.
Yeah, there's tons to do in Puerto Vallarta. You won't be bored.
Good.
Perfect.
Back in Manitoba, where winter has settled in, this couple is looking forward to their Mexican vacation.
You can make the choice. You can support Canada, support Mexico.
Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in this morning for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on our YouTube live stream or anywhere on your CBC Listen app. Thank you for joining us this morning. Coming up, it's a dark and cold Winnipeg morning. You're shivering at the bus stop when you see it in the distance. A bright, warm Winnipeg transit bus. But your hopes of a ride are dashed when it passes right by you, bursting at the seams with passengers, too full to take on anyone else. The technical term for this is a pass-up. CBC's Cameron McLean will be here with new data about how often it's happening in our city. CBC's Heather Wells is here with a look at news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a heightened level of security is coming to Winnipeg City Hall. A new walk-through metal detection system is going to be installed at the entrance early next year. This, as another councillor hired 2 private guards last week for an event in her ward. Janice Lukes brought them in as a precaution after hearing about a possible protest over changes to Winnipeg Transit. So that story's coming up as well. Businesses had their say and a chance to ask questions about a proposed safe consumption site at 366 Henry. Beverly Burkhardt at Winnipeg Inner City Missions is located within a 250-meter bubble around the proposed site. Her community center is geared towards children, and she says parents won't want to take their children to an area with an increased risk. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Now, Abby, I know I was just talking about a cold, frigid, blustery morning waiting for the bus, which is typical of Winnipeg winter, but not typical for today.
Not typical for today. You're going to feel that mild condition as you step outside this morning and ask yourself, I hope I'm not overdressed. Yes, you still need to keep those layers around because the system will be changing on your way back home. But for now, in the city, we're spotting 0 at the Forks and 2 degrees at the airport. Clear conditions. Temperatures hovering near freezing before we reach that high of 3 degrees later today. Expect sunshine, but the clouds will build and a good chance of rain showers or even flurries this afternoon as those southwest winds turn into powerful gusty winds in this part of the province. And then we'll see temperatures drop sharply to about minus 13 later. Similar conditions we're seeing across the southern regions. We're looking at 6 degrees around Melita, 7 degrees around Morden, and even 6 degrees around Port Prairie this morning. But if you track it up north, minus 20 in Gillam, minus 19 in Thompson, minus 24 around Tuduli Lake, and minus 21 in Churchill, with a wind chill close to the 40s this morning. But right now, Winnipeg, it is clear outside and it's 0 in the city.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Abby Adiemi. A big hello and thank you to Darren Morash, producing our YouTube live stream this morning. And hello and good morning to Corey Funk, show director.
Hello, good morning. Yes, so all morning, the biggest issue has been westbound portage at Burnell. There was a fire there right at the corner in a building. That's the one that's just west of the Liquor Mart there at the corner of Portage and Burnell. Originally it was closed, but now it is open down to 1 lane still, though, westbound Portage. So keep right to get through there. My wife actually just texted me. She said she was going through there. Very slow going, but she was able to get through. Good morning, Annika. As well, a couple things to keep an eye out for on northbound Pembina. Dudley. The northbound curb lane is blocked, so keep left to get around that as well. Northbound Pembina, just approaching Jubilee, there's some construction in the far left lane. That's actually causing really big backups as folks kind of try to zipper their way through there. So that's northbound Pembina approaching Jubilee. Very slow going there as well. If you do see anything else going on out there, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, let's step back a few days in the forecast and once again imagine that it's a chilly Winnipeg morning. Maybe you're waiting for your bus and finally it comes into view only to drive right on by. It's too full to stop and pick up anyone else. This is what's called a pass-up. And according to the City of Winnipeg data, it has happened thousands of times this fall alone. Darian Duclos rides the bus every day for work. Here he is speaking with CBC's Cameron McLean.
Like, I'll get off work at like 4:30, but I'll leave like a little early just to try and catch the buses, and I'll catch my bus at like 5.
So do you have to
well, like they keep like ripping past because they're either full or they're usually just full. But I mean, it's like I've kind of learned to expect it now. So like I'll like hop out there and I'm just like, okay, like people like see the blue coming and they'll like start lining up and I'm like, funny, you know.
Cam has been looking into this data and is here to tell us more. Good morning.
Good morning.
So Cam, what do the numbers tell us about how often pass-ups are happening?
Well, they're definitely up. If we look at just the numbers between September and November when the fall schedule began, Winnipeg Transit recorded just under 7,000 pass-ups. That's
pass-ups in the fall have risen steadily since the pandemic as the network returned to full service. This year,
now,
the number jumped by nearly 1,200. An increase of more than 20.
School, people are back at work after the summer. Routines are just kind of getting settled. But longer term, pass-ups have been climbing steadily since the pandemic shut down as service levels return to normal and more people go back to work. But the city says those numbers are still lower than they were pre-COVID.
And you met 3 riders at Jubilee Station. What did they tell you about what this actually feels like on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. Well, just to give you a picture, unlike today, this was on Friday that I went. It was cold. It was windy. It was exactly the kind of day where you don't want to get passed up. So first up, I met Darian, who we just heard from, Darian Duclos, who he takes the bus downtown 5 days a week. He told me pass-ups, especially in the afternoon, are something that he plans for now. So how often would you say you get passed up by us?
Going to work, maybe 3 times. And then on the way back, it's like maybe like 6 or 7.
In a week?
Like on a day.
On a day?
Yeah, on a day.
Met Yuna Du. She relies on multiple buses to get home from work. And she told me being passed up can mean missing connections and adding time to her commute. How do you feel when that happens?
Feel depressed? I'm not sure. I feel, oh my God, I still need to wait another bus. I take 3 buses to go back to my home. So if I miss this one, I may miss the next one. That's, oh my God, I need to wait like half hours. Oh, that's.
Then there was Timothy Mercado. He's a high school student, and he takes the bus as his main way of getting around.
I mean, it's just what happens. People need to get somewhere. So if it happens, it happens. I would just wait for the next bus to come.
And you were saying you're thinking about like changing your routine to try to avoid that?
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to do.
Yeah, like how would you do it differently?
I mean, there are different times. So there's certain times where a lot of people are on the bus, so you either go earlier or later than that. So.
Yeah.
Very patient kid.
Mm-hmm.
Cam, what was the city's response to all of this?
Well, as I mentioned, they say September is historically one of the busiest times for transit with more riders, unsettled routines, peak demand. But they also say pass-ups this fall are comparable to 2019, which they say is the last normal year before COVID. Councillor Janice Lukes, who chairs the Public Works Committee, she says fuller buses are a sign of increasing demand.
Anecdotally, I would say more people are taking the bus and filling the buses. And the buses are full, thus they're passing up. Right? That's why there's pass-ups, is because people can't get on the bus. So I would take from that anecdotally, there's more people taking these routes. The buses are full, and that's why there's a pass-up. So I would look at that positively. Not the pass-up part, but just more people taking the bus, filling the buses.
Lukes also says the network overhaul that happened earlier this summer was the most significant change in transit's history. And they knew they wouldn't get everything right first, and they're making adjustments.
You also spoke with the transit union. What are operators saying about what's happening on the ground?
Yeah, Chris Scott, the president of local ATU, Local 1505, he told me pass-ups are frustrating for not just riders, but for drivers as well, because the riders get frustrated, and that frustration often gets passed on to whoever the driver is that eventually does pick them up. Scott also warned that frequency alone doesn't solve capacity problems, especially without enough operating funding.
The success of this frequent service spine and feeder is dependent on the city's willingness to continue to adapt to meet the needs of the riding public. When you create something as expansive as this primary transit network, it all is done on theory and numbers. And until you put it in application, you don't know how those theories actually play out.
So what's coming next? Is anything changing that might actually reduce pass-ups?
Well, some changes have already happened. The winter schedule that took effect this last weekend made several changes. They're expanding late-night service on most on-request zones. They're rewriting schedules where buses were regularly late, and they're adding capacity on some routes where crowding has been an issue, including on some school routes. The city says those changes are based on rider feedback since the new network launched. We'll keep monitoring to see if the city's data shows any improvements.
Thanks for joining us, Cam.
Thank you very much.
That's CBC reporter Cameron McLean, who's been digging into Winnipeg Transit pass-up data.
On This Is Manitoba, we celebrate who we are, and we lean into the challenges here that can make this place even better. I'm Marcy Marcusa, host of This Is Manitoba. On the podcast, we tackle one topic in a new episode every Friday. It's always about us, the news, and the people here. Get into some local listening. Find and follow This Is Manitoba wherever you get your podcasts.
CBC's New Year's Eve show is back, and we want to know, what are you doing on New Year's Eve? Last year, we reached 6.8 million Canadians as we counted down live in all 6 time zones. Now, we're looking to join celebrations across Canada. Are you getting married? Doing something special? Send an email to ask@cbc.ca, and we might send our cameras to your party. Get ready for the live Cross Canada Countdown.
The time is 8:22. Thank you for joining us here on Information Radio. Well, if you're already thinking about what your plans are this summer, the lineup for at least one summer music festival is already announced. The Country Thunder Festival just announced big-name artists like Kane Brown and Bailey Zimmerman will be playing at the Princess Auto Stadium on July 3rd. Here's Kane Brown with Backseat Driver.
It's 7:30 in the morning in a Mickey D's drive-thru. 2 muffins, 1 coffee, and a little bitty orange juice. I saw a man with a sign on the corner. I rolled my window down, handed him $1. That's when I heard her ask, "Hey Daddy, who was that?" And before I could answer back, she said, "Daddy, look, there's a plane in the sky. Are we there yet? Did you just see that dog run by? The squirrels have houses in the trees. White God put stingers on honeybees. It's crazy all the things she sees on the side of the road, out of that window beside her. I wish I could be more like her. My little dangling feet, pretty and pink, backseat driver." Later on that day on the highway back home, I saw a lady in a black Mercedes yelling at her phone. She flew by me with her finger in the air, and I had to act like I didn't care. And that's when I heard her ask, "Daddy, why was she so mad?" And before I could answer back, she said, "Daddy, can you please buckled in. Saying, Daddy, look, there's a plane in the sky. Are we there yet? Did you just see that dog run by? The squirrels have houses in the trees. Why would God put his finger on a honeybee? It's crazy all the things he sees on the side of the road, out of that window beside her. I wish I could be more like her. My little dangling feet, pretty and pink, backseat driver. My backseat driver. 7:30 in the morning in a Mickey D's drive-through. 2 muffins, 1 coffee, and a little bitty orange juice.
As Kane Brown with Backseat Driver, he was just announced as one of the headliners. Oh, I love that soundscape. That's so fun. One of the headliners at the Princess Auto Stadium's Country Thunder Festival coming up this July.
Festive season, there's one place to be with your holiday favorites on CBC. Whether you're a Grinch, hate, double hate, or full of cheer.
Nobody's walking out on this fun old-fashioned family Christmas. No, we're all in this together.
The season's best are waiting right here.
The bell still rings for me, as it does for all who truly believe.
For holiday joy from start to end. Watch free on CBC and CBC Gem.
There is nothing like a good Christmas movie. What might dethrone that, though, in the Christmas season is the food. And Marjorie Dowhouse is here. Your call-in this afternoon is about just that.
Yeah, because the holidays, I mean, food is a big part of any holiday celebration, of course, right, Chloe? Do you have a favorite holiday food or recipe?
Oddly enough, I need Brussels sprouts.
Ooh.
Every holiday. I do this like balsamic glaze Brussels sprout that I demand of myself to make every Christmas. It's just, I don't know why it is that, but I always crave it during the holidays.
Oh, good. Maybe let's get Corey in here. Corey, do you have a favorite holiday meal or food, or is there a special tradition around a meal for you?
We do. My family do raclette on Christmas Eve. So that's where you kind of grill everything like right in front of you there, and we get the cheeses and all the yummy things. It's really fun. Yeah, I mean, now with the toddler, it's a little bit trickier because you like don't burn yourself. But we make it work. Yeah.
For me, I'm Filipino. It's my mom's lumpia, egg rolls.
Oh, yeah.
So good. I can't get enough of it. I miss it. I can taste it right now. So what we're doing today on Radio Noon is we're talking about holiday foods. What's your favorite holiday food? Is there a favorite holiday snack that you have? Maybe there's a special story about a traditional recipe or meal that your family shares or you share with friends or that you create. Maybe there's a holiday food you just don't like at all. Fruitcake has a little bit of a reputation. Ooh. Some people love it. Some people don't. So we want you to call in and let's talk holiday food, holiday meals coming up on Radio Noon this afternoon.
Oh, so excited for that. I'm going to listen and just get hungry.
Do it.
Great. It's lunchtime, so it's perfect. Thank you, Marge.
Thanks, Chloe.
That is CBC's Marjorie Dowhouse. Radio Noon starts at 12 o'clock, but the call-in happens just after your 12:30 news. Corey Funk is here for one last look at the commute.
Yes, westbound Portage still been very backed up because of that fire earlier. It is now open, but just one lane, just your far left median lane is open now. That's Portage at Burnell. So heads up, might be slow going. Keep left to get around that. Also northbound Pembina just before Jubilee. You lose your left lane as well. That's caused some folks to slow right on down. If you see anything else, though, give me a call on the CBC Commuter Line, 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Corey. It's time now for your CBC local news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, we're warming up. It is 0 downtown, but 2 already at the airport. We're headed to a high today of 3, and then the temperature falls off to -8 this afternoon. We're going to see a good chance of showers changing to flurries this afternoon as well, and quite windy. And then tomorrow, brace for it, a bit of a snowstorm headed our way. A Winnipeg city councillor hired 2 security guards for an event last week out of safety concerns. Janice Lukes brought them in for a tea and talk in her Waverley West ward. She heard rumblings of a protest over changes to Winnipeg Transit, and she wanted to keep herself, the people in the area, and workers at the tea house safe. Luke says elected officials are seeing an increase in online hate and harassment.
I was getting feedback from citywide that, I'm the most hated person in the city. I'm a dumb animal, really wild comments, right? And I just thought, we'll just have a couple security people there and see what happens.
At City Hall itself, a heightened level of security is coming. A new walk-through metal detection system will be installed at the entrance early next year. When Winnipeg Transit overhauled its bus network this summer, the city promised faster and more reliable service. But new data shows more riders are being left behind as full buses pass them by. Darian Duclos takes the bus downtown 5 days a week. He says pass-ups during the afternoon rush have become something he has to plan around.
They keep ripping past because they're either full or, they're usually just full, but...
Between September and November, Winnipeg Transit recorded nearly 7,000 pass-ups, about 1,200 more than the same period last year. It is an increase of more than 20%. Winnipeg Transit launched a new winter schedule last weekend. It adds late-night services, changes to schedules to reduce delays, and more capacity on some routes. About 40 people gathered at Winnipeg City Hall yesterday, marking the second night of Hanukkah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvah.
Mayor Scott Gilliam also on hand, lighting a candle on the menorah, telling the crowd the city stands with the Jewish community as they grapple with the weekend shooting attack in Australia. 15 people were killed at a Hanukkah celebration on Bondi Beach. Rob Waldman is board president of Ehevra Mishnaya Synagogue on Jefferson Avenue.
My own little synagogue has undertaken considerable security measures in the last year, which breaks my heart that it's necessary. But yes, I feel safe.
Waldman says the best way to fight anti-Semitism is by being proud of the Jewish faith. 2 artificial intelligence companies want to build an AI data center in the RM of Richot, south of Winnipeg. The companies say they want to power the center with electricity generated from natural gas. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
In communications to investors, Jet AI and Consensus Core say they want to build a data center on land north of Île-des-Chênes. They want to fuel the plant with 6 gas turbines. The province wants to stop burning gas to generate power, even though Manitoba Hydro is building 3 new gas turbines near Brandon. Manitoba Hydro says it has no knowledge of the Île-des-Chênes proposal. Adrian Sala, the minister responsible for hydro, says the province is choosy about who gets to connect to the electrical grid.
We need to look at every project on its own merits and then determine what the best path forward with the lens on creating the greatest benefits for Manitobans.
Manitoba's climate action team skeptical of the resources required for data centers. Laura Cameron is a program director.
It's unclear how Manitobans would benefit from this very energy intensive and water intensive industry that doesn't create very many jobs at all.
The mayor of Richot says there is no formal proposal for the data center. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, businesses had their say and a chance to ask questions about a proposed safe consumption site for 366 Henry. Raymond Wan at the Winnipeg Chinese Cultural and Community Centre doesn't think the site is a fit with long-term plans to revitalize that area.
We worked really hard, almost 12 years to get a project on that piece of vacant land, hoping to have another injection of people coming back to the community or service the community. It looks like we're doing one thing on one side with a different set of theory, but then we have another different set of theory elsewhere. What is the priority?
Beverly Burkhardt at Winnipeg Inner City Missions is located within the 250-meter bubble around the proposed site on Henry. Her community center is geared towards children.
Not just disappointing, but it's disheartening and discouraging because the impact on our community is going to be that parents are not going to be comfortable with their children being in our area.
Another public consultation meeting is scheduled for tonight. You can find more news updated throughout your day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks for the morning, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Corey Funk is here with a last look at the commute.
Just westbound Portage at Burnell. You're just down to one lane. Your far left lane because of a fire in a building there, just right at the corner. But other than that, though, it's pretty slow going. Also on northbound Pembina at Jubilee, you lose your left lane, so keep right to get around that.
And Abby Adiemi.
Yeah, a tale of two seasons. The south warming up, and up north we're still seeing that deep freeze. Southern regions, we're seeing temperatures between -7 and 7 degrees at this time. Most of the region down south is expecting that winter conditions to roll in as we get into the overnight period. But before that, we enjoy some mild temperatures. Up north, we're looking at -22 around Churchill at this time, with that wind chill around -47.
Oof. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Abby Adiemi. Thank you to Darren Morash, our YouTube live stream producer. I'm Chloe Friesen. Thanks for listening to Information Radio. I'll be back again tomorrow. But coming up next is The Current.